Next up, we did not have any executive summary, executive sessions this evening, so I have no executive summary. We have bills to play on the consent agenda and also results from the Clean Ocean Access Weaver Cove cleanup.
Mr. President, point of order. I see so many children in the audience, and I'm just wondering if we might be able to move the item about which they've come to speak to the top so that we can let them get home.
Typically, the business agenda doesn't take us long, but if that's the council's pleasure, I don't care.
I have one announcement, Mr. President.
Sure.
I need to recluse myself for the wind turbine and the consent agenda tonight.
Okay, for the bills and the...
For the bills.
For the bills?
For the bills portion.
And the Weaver Cove, or just the bills? Just the bills?
Just the bills.
Okay, so you can recuse yourself for the bills.
And then the wind turbine, not Weaver Cove.
Okay. Right, so the wind turbine's not on tonight, so that's next time,
Correct, but
for the future.
I asked the Ethics Commission for an opinion, and at that point, because I did that, I'm going to take a back seat and step out of the debate.
Okay, so there's no wind turbine tonight to debate on.
Understood, but I filled out the
Pedro?
paperwork.
Okay. Ms. Pedro?
Yeah, I'll agree with Ms. Ujifuza, and let's move, I'll make a motion to move new B1 up to in front of OB1, so we can get through the business agenda.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, so on the consent agenda, can I have a motion? We'll do them separately. A motion to receive the bills and place them on file.
So, question about the bills?
Sure. You want to just second it and then ask a question?
Second.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Mr. Rayner, on the transfer station for the Prudence Island, just point of information, the 200 amp service that was provided for the compactors, were those just installed, or is this just a late billing? I'm just trying to get a feel for when were those operational?
Was it for coastal?
Yes, coastal. Yep.
It's an old bill.
Okay. They've been hooked up for a while, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I plead my ignorance on this one. Did we authorize the $18,000 for Quinnipiac Planning Commission?
The 18?
Yes, you did.
18,000, okay. Thank you. And lastly,
That's
sure.
for obviously this fiscal year, so that was authorized. We didn't get the invoice until just recently.
And that's all we've paid so far?
That's all you've paid.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, just looking for information on the benches provided, park and pool. Does that mean anything? Page 3, special revenue.
I don't see it.
Mr. President, I can speak to that.
Mr. Crosby, go ahead.
We have a memorial bench program for Park Avenue. We've had some requests in recent months for some new benches. There's an account that maintained for buying new benches. I purchased 2 new benches. They have arrived and they will be installed on Park Avenue sometime in the near future. Brian and I have to go out and look at sites and so forth, so that's a pass-through.
So that's a pass-through.
Yes.
Entity comes, a person or a family comes along, buys the bench, it goes into that account, and then we pay it out of that account.
We pay for half the bench, the person pays for the other half of the bench, and they pay for their own plaque.
Okay,
This
Very
was
good,
a
thank
fund
you.
that was set up years ago.
great.
Thanks for the info.
Any other questions on the bills? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0 and 1 recusal. And we have a motion to receive and place on file the results from Clean Ocean Access cleanup at Weaver Cove.
So moved. Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next, we're going to be sitting as the Board of Licensed Commissioners. We have a new annual victuals license for Salsa's Burrito Grill, LLC, at 108 Chases Road.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Motion to adjourn?
Not yet. We missed
more?
one. We have a request that we had formerly put the transfer of the liquor license from Beachcomber on the 26th agenda of March. The new owners have come back and said that they have some baking that they need to get done prior to that and would like us to do it on the 12th. Madam Clerk, you were able to get one in today, and you'll have 2 more done before the next meeting? One more. Okay. So if we can have a motion to
Move to the
change the
12th?
date, to move
Change
to
the
the
date to
12th.
the 12th of March?
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Now, Mr. Kessin.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we have a revisit of the town council meeting minutes from the 22nd of January.
Mr. President, submitted with the town council minutes for the 22nd, I would make a motion to combine the 2 documents into one for clarity and submittal to the town clerk, to make it one document. If so, approved by everybody else. That's my motion.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Uzifusa.
I believe that it's important to make sure our minutes are accurate. However, I would reject including Mr. Kessin's memo, because first, Mr. Kessin wants to include 2 pages of a 160-page report, as well as a few snippets from a much larger oral presentation. And any time you cherry-pick a tiny bit of information from a larger document or presentation, by definition, you're providing less information and being less transparent. And secondly, Robert's Rules of Order, which this town council voted to follow in 2012, states that the minutes should record actions taken, not opinions or debate. Third, although the minutes can sometimes include more, what's in this memo should not be included because it seems to me misleading and potentially defamatory. For example, Mr. Kessin says it's a fact that there were 2 audits when really there was only 1. There was a single page on there was a change to a number on page 31. Mr. Rayner asked that a $600,000 amount be pulled out as a separate figure so that it would become clearer where the Heidi Drive settlement was. And so it seems absurd to call this single change 2 audits or a second audit. And fourth, I'm very concerned that some of the comments are potentially defamatory. I mean, not all criticisms are defamatory. I could say, for example, that Dr. Ryan looks silly wearing a jester's hat at the Common Fence Point Mardi Gras party, but that isn't slander because, first of all, truth is a defense, but secondly, his reputation was not significantly harmed. But the accusations in this memo are more serious. They say that internal controls broke down, that the charter was violated, and I'm afraid that this is very potentially libelous or slanderous. So in sum, it's my opinion that including these suggested changes is contrary to Robert's Rules of Order, potentially confuses the public with cherry-picked information, misleadingly presents opinions as facts, and presents unsupported accusations that are potentially defamatory. So I move we vote against incorporating the changes of this memo and approve the draft minutes as submitted at the last meeting.
Mr. President, may I
have a motion.
respond?
I'm sorry, I withdraw that then. I suggest that we vote against the motion.
Mr. Kessin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I submitted this added document to the town clerk to verify that what I drove some posts in the ground. I get that. I asked the auditor if there was 2 audits. He responded. I put down the minutes and what I thought he said. Handing the town clerk the minutes for her to review, and that was the request last town council meeting, to have her verify what was in my document was in fact what was said. I don't know that this document was changed or didn't. The fact remains, Mr. President, that this document with these added comments are what's on the tape and was asked of the town clerk to do it, to verify that what was on this altered document was in fact not my words, although I gave her the minutes to go to scan the DVD and put her words in. And I think that the town clerk does work for the people, do work for the council to capture those minutes, and that was the request that was given. If this does not get included, it's fine, Mr. President. I'm prepared to vote.
Okay. Specifically, the motion was
It can go up or down, and then we'll do another one.
No, I'm going to read what the motion was, because I don't believe the town clerk and the clerk's office reviewed these and went back to the tape and reviewed them.
Okay.
Motion to amend the motion. So your first motion was to approve the minutes made by Mr. Kessin, seconded by Mr. Aguirre. Then the motion was to amend the motion made by Mr. Kessin, seconded by Mr. Gleason, to include that the town council did not vote on a legislative agenda. Oh, that was different minutes. Sorry,
Yes, different.
my bad. You didn't put those in there.
No, I don't think I did that
No.
one. I do get confused at times.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to read to make sure, because we didn't.
We haven't approved those
we don't
minutes
We
yet.
haven't approved those minutes, but those, I'm looking at the minutes from the last meeting when we would have approved those minutes, and that discussion isn't on there.
Correct, because we haven't approved
I don't
those
believe
minutes.
but I don't believe we directed the town clerk to review the tape and verify the minutes. Ms. Pedro?
That was my understanding of Mr. Kessin's original motion. I didn't expect to get this in and have this be added to the minutes. I thought that this was Mr. Kessin's highlights to give to the clerk so that she could review the minutes, so that she could add the verbiage that would reflect what happened at the meeting.
Okay. In my discussion, I was uncomfortable adding these to the minutes last meeting because we didn't have time to review them.
Correct.
So I asked to review them.
And again, that's why I gave them to the clerk to validate what was on the piece of paper.
Okay.
Other than what was in bold.
I am in agreement with Ms. Ujifusa that the minutes of a meeting are to tell us exactly what, not exactly, give us the highlights of what went on, what the motions were, and who made the motions, and a rough idea and outline of what happened, not play-by-play, which is essentially what Mr. Kessin's minutes or addendum is. They're there. If people want to look at them, they're there. I don't agree with adding them onto the minutes. I would like to have the minutes done or presented and approved the way they were back in the last meeting. So, Ms. Pedro.
Well, other minutes that I've gotten, there are highlights from the minutes, and I don't believe Mr. Kessin wants, again, all these, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kessin, all of this in the minutes. All that he's requesting are the bold sentences, and the rest of what he's put in here is to verify that the bold sentences are true.
And that would be validated by the town clerk. It's fine.
So I'm confused with this motion because this motion is saying to include all of this in the minutes?
Only because that's what we got back, and I thought it was all validated by the town clerk.
All right, well, I wouldn't
Which captures the
want to
minutes.
include all of this in the minutes either, but I would like to include just the bold that was in.
I'm ready to vote, Mr. President. Doesn't matter which way this goes.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor, Mr. Gleason, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just for clarification, I agree with all that was said, except that, and I think this, on page 3, it shows, page 5, I guess, the fact that 2 different audits were issued and not identified, I would not agree with that, because it was 1 audit, but 2 different reports were issued, as opposed to 2 different audits. But my clarification.
And I also don't agree on page 3, the fact that there was really a deficit in 2017. Based on the accounting principles that were presented, there was not a deficit. And that was clarified by Shahady and Hagan, I gotta still mess that up. Sorry, Mary. So, the motion was to approve the minutes with the addendum. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 6-1. So,
Mr. President, I move that we accept the minutes as submitted at the last meeting.
Second?
all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-1.
7-0.
6-1. Ms. Pedro was against. All right, so now we have the meeting minutes from the 12th and the executive session as well. Have any questions on the meeting minutes from the 12th?
I didn't get the meetings.
No minutes. No, just the exec. Just the exec, I'm sorry.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Mr. Rayner, Town Administrator's report.
Good evening, Mr. President, Council, ladies and gentlemen. First, just an update on the status of the investigation into the fiscal year 2012-13 warrant. Late last week, I completed the investigation into that warrant. I am preparing a brief for the council, and I will deliver that to the town council at our next meeting on March 12th. With respect to the police station construction project, we've completed 2 milestones since my last report. Foundation walls are completed, and 5 of 8 interior piers are in place. Since my last report, the geotech engineer has discovered that there is some unsuitable soil in the interior of the foundation walls.
Let the record show that a bumblebee came running through the room. Flew through the room.
Can't top that. That material had to be removed, and crushed rock had to be laid in place to remediate that issue, and the associated costs were covered under our built-in contingency fund. Structural steel has been prepared and is ready for construction. On-site delivery, however, has been deferred by the contractor so that they can more effectively and efficiently resequence certain activities to mitigate some delays encountered due to the poor weather we've had. As a result, we have completed or are in the process of completing underground plumbing, laying of the lower level slab, and other related activities which will precede the structural steel delivery and placement. That deferral will last approximately 2 weeks. And then overall, the project remains slightly under budget. With respect to our natural hazard mitigation plan, on February 20th, we held our first meeting with the VHB contractor that we hired to help write the hazard mitigation plan, and that began the process of our update. The purpose of the plan is to identify and prioritize actions to help make Portsmouth more resilient to a variety of natural hazards such as flooding and hurricanes. When completed, this FEMA-approved and town-adopted plan will qualify Portsmouth for annual pre-disaster mitigation and select post-disaster grant funding from the federal government. This 5-year plan will rely on public input at various stages of the planning process. And coming soon, there will be an anonymous survey made available to the public to help us understand public perception of natural hazards and the public's perception of realizing personal preparedness and collecting ideas on how Portsmouth can become more resilient. The public will also have the opportunity to review and provide comments of the draft hazard mitigation plan later in the year. And then lastly, I'd like to draw people's attention to the latest edition of the Rhode Island Monthly Magazine. The magazine featured a local business, Ragged Island Brewing Company, in the latest issue, but also published several pages of positive news and information about our town. And I'd like to thank the Portsmouth Historical Society and Jim Garman, who helped do the research for the publisher. And if you get a chance, please take a look at the article. It's very flattering for Portsmouth. And that concludes my report, Mr. President.
And go to Ragged Island and have a beer. It's good beer. Anybody have questions for Mr. Rayner? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we had a motion earlier for those who weren't here to move new business number 1 up in front of old business number 1, which is a public hearing for proposed amendment to Chapter 326 of the Portsmouth Town Code Solid Waste to add Article 6, Plastic Bag Regulations, 326-33 to 40. Dave, where are you? Mr. McLaughlin? There he is. I was going to say, there's no way he missed this.
Council President and fellow councilors, I'm going to keep my points brief, and I might take a second trip up here to follow up any points that aren't addressed.
Sure.
Because I think there's a few people here who want to share their thoughts. I want to reflect on the bumblebee that we just saw. You remember how that made you feel? You laughed, you felt good. That's a sense of hope, and that's the next generation that we've got to be thinking about tonight. So we've been here for 19 months. We've provided lots of information. We've got an ordinance in place in Newport, in Middletown. It has a hardship variance. So if a business experiences an issue, they can apply for a hardship variance. No business, to the best of my knowledge, has experienced any hardship. I was in communication with counselors from Newport in the last few hours. I was in communications with counselors from Middletown in the last few days. I emailed the town manager in Middletown today. No word of any hardship. I was in indirect communication with the city manager in Newport last week of the Cliff Walk Commission. No issues there. So what I can see so far from our work is that the amount of bags are reducing in nature. People are accepting of the ordinance, and there aren't any issues. So I hope that we can move forward tonight and position Portsmouth as a leader for environmental stewardship. And I look forward to addressing any questions that you have after, I think, a few people share their thoughts. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. If anybody would like to get up and speak in favor or against the ordinance, this is a public hearing. For the record, you please state your name, your address, and speak into the microphone so that the clerk can hear you for the record. Go ahead. Oh, I don't know. They did a very nice job on the Pledge of Allegiance.
They did.
Thank you. All right. Good evening. Daniela Abbott, 52 Ladera Avenue. We are Troop 730 here in Portsmouth. We have 20 second graders, 17 of whom are Portsmouth residents. This year, the girls have been working on a series of badges called Wonders of Water. We have learned about the importance of clean water and how everything we do on land can affect our oceans. As leaders, educators, and parents, it is critical that we lead by example and show our children the importance of doing our part in reducing plastic waste. We should stand together as one town and one island and commit to taking this important step. Please ban single-use plastic bags and show our children that we can take meaningful steps toward a better, cleaner future. Now, a few of the girls would like to give their remarks. What's your name first?
You could tilt that all the way down, Daniel. There you go.
I don't think it is fair to all our sea animals that some of our plastic bags are going into the ocean. A sea animal can eat that plastic bag and get sick. That is why we should stop using harmful plastic bags. Plastic bags are no good. We should use all reusable bags. Plastic bags can hurt animals in the ocean. Let's make good choices and use reusable bags. I want to ban plastic bags because one day I was swimming in the ocean and saw a plastic bag and seagulls around it. I hope they did not eat it.
I think that we should use reusable bags because the bags we are using are going into the oceans and hurting animals.
I think that we should ban plastic bags so we can save the ocean and keep animals healthy.
That's it from us. Thank you so much.
First, I'd like to thank you to the Portsmouth Town Council a lot for allowing me to speak on behalf of the students of All Saints Academy. Hello, my name is Grayson Diacentis, and I'm in the 8th grade of All Saints Academy. I am also the student council president. Last year, we helped to ban plastic bags in Middletown and Newport, and I would like to applaud everyone's effort to make the ban possible. Personally, I've seen a lot of people use reusable bags in stores, and it makes me feel proud that we are slowly becoming a society that will eliminate using single-use items like plastic bags.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Evan McKinley from St. Michael's Country Day School, and I'm a 6th grader. And our school has worked for banning the plastic bag for 2 years now. And I have a few facts to share with you about plastic bags and why it harms our oceans. The first thing is that there's 8.8 million tons of plastic floating, dumped into our oceans each year. There's 5 trillion pieces of plastic right now in our ocean. And that supermarkets has introduced plastic bags, like you see on the floor right now, since 1977.
So, thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, council members, ladies and gentlemen, and young ladies, and young gentlemen. My name's Joe Cooper. I live in Middletown, but I still live on the same island as the rest of us. Number 6, Simmons Terrace in Middletown.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Portsmouth, one of 3 towns on an island in the Ocean State, is home to 2 of the most important marine boatyards and boat builders, Hinckley and NEB, in the state, and 2 other prominent marinas, Brewers Yacht Yard and Pirate Cove. And I apologize if I missed anybody else. The visitors and boat owners who come to Rhode Island to these marinas, to Portsmouth, want to look at the beautiful land and water seascapes, not plastic bags in the water. Like Middletown and Newport, both with strong maritime industries, I believe Portsmouth shares responsibility for the natural health and the visuals of our island and the waterways around it. I urge Portsmouth to join Middletown and Newport and many other locations and act to restrict the use of plastic bags. Granted, some may see this as a chore, remembering to bring the tote bag from home because of that silly plastic bag law. We are told that we can recycle plastic bags. That may be so, but the best research indicates that around 7% of plastic bags are actually recycled, so 93% of the bags are not. Some may argue that the state is interfering in the private practice of its citizens, but is not one of the primary tasks of the state to ensure the health of the location their citizens live in that they are elected to protect. Considering the restrictions on cigarettes, seatbelts, driving codes and so on, they are all aimed at keeping the population in the town safe and the environment clean. Why is the management of such a colossal waste of resources and making something that is deadly to the vast swaths of the world's animal life, including the fish we eat, viewed as such an onerous task, especially in the Ocean State, a state that lives by its maritime heritage and is 1/3 water? We should be leading the charge, not being ambivalent, or worse, fighting it. Waste of resources, you say. You will note I am of Anglo-Saxon heritage, Scottish in fact, and so I am genetically predisposed to not waste money. Plastic bags are, amongst other things, a monumental waste of natural resources, which are themselves being depleted at a good clip, let alone throwing it out after something like 12 minutes of use. Let me just offer you a few numbers for your contemplation. This is from the EPA. There are something like 500 billion to 1 trillion plastic bags worldwide. The US uses 100 billion per annum, and that takes 12 million barrels of oil to produce. The US consumes a bit over 7 billion per annum. Plastic bags remain on the beaches, in the ocean, on sidewalks, in the forest, parks, in the trees and landfills for anywhere between 500 and 1,000 years. It takes about 14 plastic bags for the equivalent of gas to drive a car 1 mile. Plastic bags are totally banned in China. Whole Foods and IKEA do not use single-use plastic bags in the US or the UK. Target, on the other hand, gives away enough plastic bags per year to wrap around the Earth 7 times. If we use the equator at, say, 25,000 miles circumference, that is the order of 175,000 miles, which, as I'm sure all the students know, is about 75% of the way to the moon.
If they didn't, they do now.
They do now, yes. So do all of you. US retailers spend $4 billion on plastic bags, which is passed on to the consumers. New York City spent $10 million just on cleaning them up. I checked online, Uline, a vendor of these things, sells a 1,000-count box for $37, which is about 4 cents. And if you add another couple of cents for freight and branding and packaging and so on, you're up around 4, 5, 6 cents per. The average American family takes home almost 1,500 plastic shopping bags a year. So at 4 cents per, that's $60. If you would go to the bank and withdraw $60, count for 12 minutes and throw it away, let me know where you do it, because I want to go get it. According to Waste Management, only 1% of plastic bags are returned for recycling. They can't go into the regular plastic bins because they interfere with the sorting machinery in the plant. That means that the average family recycles only 15 bags, 60 cents, so that's not much. You can keep that one. The rest ends up in landfills, in the ocean, in the rivers, beaches, and on the trees and bushes around town as litter. Up to 80% of the plastic ocean pollution enters the ocean from land. There's over 250 different species have been affected by plastic pollution in the ocean. 100,000 marine animals are killed by plastic bags annually. 1 in 3 leatherback sea turtles have been found with plastic in their stomachs. And there is evidence now that degraded plastic is in the bloodstream in the system of the fish that we eat, and it is now in the human bloodstream. If you doubt any of this, go and find and see a movie called Plastic Ocean. It will knock your socks off. Plastic bags are a visual and biological pollution, and I imagine you, like me, hate seeing them in the trees, in the scrub, by the side of the road, on the beaches, and the waterways of this lovely island. Especially once they get down to the ocean, they do not break down, they merely break up. A quick whip around the internet this afternoon, I counted 13 states debating some degree of restrictions on plastic shopping bags. It's notable that they are all connected in some way to a maritime environment. They're either Long Island Sound, Hudson River, they're in Ohio on the Cuyahoga River, they're in Alaska, Maine, Massachusetts trying to go statewide, Virginia's going statewide, there's apparently one in Rhode Island for statewide, and so on. There's ample evidence that using plastic bags is a habit that humans really need to change, and many parts of the US are realizing this, and I believe Portsmouth should join the other 2 towns on the island in doing that. I mean, really, how hard is it to have a couple of tote bags in the car? Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. The bigger question is, for me though, this is not really about us, those of us of a certain age in the room, and somebody alluded to this a minute ago. We all do what we can for our children. We send them to good schools, we fret over them, we buy them bumblebee costumes, sports gear, we give them our care and feeding, our love and shelter, even if they are still at home at 30 years old. We leave them the house and our money when we die. What is wrong with being part of leaving them a clean town and a clean planet? Is this really such a hardship? Citizens of Portsmouth and the Town Council, please pass this restriction on the plastic shopping bags. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, good evening. My name's Laura Reaper. I live on 39 Benjamin Drive in Portsmouth. I've been attending bag ordinances here since August. I have much appreciation for Dave, his board, and their supporters and their dedication to this movement. I appreciate their team's commitment to come to these meetings, to educate, and to give us the facts and benefits about eliminating the single-use plastic bags and how this bag ban can help clean our oceans and the land around our beautiful island. I also like to thank the council members who have given their time and consideration for this very sensitive issue, obviously. So I did, Dave sent some pictures off today, if you wouldn't mind showing those. So I will be showing you pictures of bags that I found. I went out a couple of times, and I went out on Headley Street, Middle Road, and at the Glen. These bags in front of you are bags that I just found on Middle Road and Headley on just 2 visits. These bags are not all from stores here in Portsmouth, but many are. They've landed on our roads, never to be used again, and sometimes thrown from a car with trash in them. A single bag use is used for maybe an average of 20 minutes, but lasts 1,000 years. If the average shopper fills 300 bags a year, and there are approximately 17,000 people who live in Portsmouth, that's over 5 million bags issued a year. It doesn't make sense to offer a bag that lasts 1,000 years and when it's only going to be used for a few minutes. We can learn to use reusable bags. The reusable bags may have years of use before it eventually is discarded, rather than the current grocery bag that is used for a few minutes and then is dropped in our overcrowded landfill and becomes ocean debris that future generations will still be cleaning up. We have a voice to help them now. Lifestyle and habit changes are some of the most difficult commitments that we all don't like to make, but we can be immensely rewarded, especially considering the positive impact on our town, our oceans, our bay, and our river. Please make a commitment to bag rehab and continue to shop at our local stores using a reusable bag. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cody Sharp. I live at 223 Leaps Road. I come to you as someone who's moved here recently, just in the past few years. I live right on the river, and like most of the people in this room, I grew up on the water. I grew up on the ocean on Barrier Island in a very large state called Delaware. But so growing up by the ocean was something that influenced me. I grew up canoeing, kayaking, sailing, and thinking very purposefully about the marine environment. I was raised by an oceanographer. I'm a PhD marine biologist myself. And so I come to you wearing a couple of different hats tonight. As a citizen of Portsmouth, as a mother of 2 small children who are about bumblebee size. And I'm also coming to you with some more statistics. So we've heard a lot of really staggering numbers tonight, and I don't want to give you those numbers again. I think everybody can agree that the plastic bag debris and plastic pollution is stunning. What I can tell you is that as someone who has worked for 20 years in the field looking at marine organisms through a microscope, I've seen something happen in the past few years. I've sort of been in the field in a very unfortunate window of time. And what I've seen is that in the past 5 years, I used to look at marine organisms, and when I say organisms, I mean fish, I mean sponges, corals, organisms that live here off of the granite walls here in Fort Wetherill and Jamestown and in our Sakonnet River, but also in tropical reefs. And in the past 5 years, I started noticing, and this was independent of my colleagues all across the world, we came to this at the same time, it was very hard not to find plastic debris inside of animals. We have a current statistic, which is that 100% of animals in the marine environment have plastic debris in them. And so if you are thinking to yourself, well, I haven't seen a plastic bag myself, or I don't think the plastic bags are as big of a problem as some of the other plastic debris, I'll tell you that The most concerning thing to me about the plastic bag pollution and our use of plastics is that it all breaks down to an invisible threat. And so I recently wrote a letter to the editor last week in the Portsmouth Times talking about microplastics. And I'll just summarize by saying that no matter what the plastic is, when it breaks down, it doesn't break down all the way. So we end up with pieces that are less than 5 millimeters in size, but they stick around forever. They're ingested by oysters, they're ingested by plankton, the small microscopic organisms that live in the surface of the seawater, that are then fed on by larger fish, larger fish, larger fish. Those fish are then eaten by us. We are eating our own plastic waste, and we can stop it if we stop producing more plastic waste. To me, I'd like to just communicate to you that this is something that is very clear to people in my field, and it's very clear to me as a member of this community that we can take positive steps to make this change. And I'm very thankful that for all the work that Dave and his organization have done to move this forward. And I'm thankful to you for giving us the time to speak about this, because it's an extremely important issue for the health, not just of our oceans and our waterways, but also for the health of our families and our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kate Weymouth, and I've been the Vice President of the Barrington Town Council for the past 6 years. In October 2012, Barrington passed the second single-use plastic bag ban in New England, Westport, Connecticut being the first back in 2008. Our ban, based on Westport's boilerplate language, banned plastic bags less than 2.25 mil thick and was implemented on January 2013 without incident and with no public complaint from businesses or residents. In June 2015, it was brought to our attention that 3 corporate businesses were supplying thicker plastic bags stamped with reusable on them. These bags were exactly 2.25 mil thick, complying with the letter of the law but clearly defying the intent. The Mettler Packaging Company, among others, had figured out the loophole to the original bag ban language, requiring us, along with hundreds of other cities, towns, and countries, to amend our ordinance to close the loophole. In February of 2016, Barrington passed an amendment redefining reusable bags as requiring stitched handles and, if made of stretch plastic, be a minimum of 4 mil thick. Our amendment went into effect June 1st of that year. Again, no public complaints in the local press, to town hall, to the town manager, or to the town council. Back in 2012, some critics of the ban claimed that businesses would lose customers. This is nonsense. Ask the many countries, 2 states, hundreds of U.S. cities and towns, and the 61 Massachusetts municipalities who have passed bag bans. We humans are creatures of habit and convenience. We tend to shop at the same stores where familiarity supersedes the inconvenience of the unknown and longer drives. Since Portsmouth's immediate neighbors are plastic bag free now, with Middletown and Newport, or about to be, Bristol, how far would residents have to drive? And for a plastic bag, it just doesn't happen. In 2014, Barrington asked if our major businesses would sign the following statement, and I quote, "Our business has adjusted well to the plastic bag ban, and we find the ban has had no long-lasting negative impacts on our ability to serve our customers and on customer satisfaction." Among those businesses who signed were CVS, Talbot's, Dunkin' Donuts, Rite Aid, and Shaw's Supermarket. While there might be grumbling at the beginning of the transition, both businesses and customers adapt quickly. The only inconvenience for customers is to remember to bring their reusable bags into the stores. But really, how inconvenient is it? If you forget it, you bring one in your purse or your back pocket, and if you can get the snap undone, you've got a fine reusable bag that's washable and durable and will last for years. So if the whole of Aquidneck Island were to join the immediate neighbors with bag bans containing similar language and present a strong, solid East Bay block, it would be a game changer for Rhode Island. Massachusetts is considering a statewide ban as we speak, which is the ultimate goal. If you were to pass this ordinance, Rhode Island might join that same effort sooner than we think. Because, as my son told me 6 years ago, if taking steps to reduce plastic waste in the environment is inevitable, which it is, why not do it now? With that in mind, I urge you to pass the proposed bag ban ordinance. Thank you.
Tom Grieve, 110 Thayer Drive. I'm reading this for Nancy, who's out of town. So in spite of what you see, you need to envision someone a foot shorter, 100 pounds lighter, and twice as fierce.
And much more hair.
Much more hair. Now reading is Nancy. First, where I am coming from. I have been using reusable shopping bags occasionally since the mid-70s, frequently since the mid-80s, and consistently since the mid-90s. Not because I was forced to by a law, but because at first these bags were sometimes more convenient, then because it was the right thing to do. I have reusable shopping bags for groceries, large bags for stores like Walmart and Home Depot. I even have a divided canvas bag that is exclusively used for wine shopping. Most of my bags were freebies given by sailing groups, Girl Scouts, or the stores themselves. These groups were educating people, caring for our environment. I've read the entire draft of the Portsmouth Ordinance to ban plastic shopping bags. I do not say single-use plastic bags because they are not. People use these bags over and again for many purposes. There are so many plastic bag exclusions listed in that ordinance as to make it redundant. I've met David McLaughlin and have done my due diligence on Clean Ocean Access. Clean Ocean Access is a worthy organization that does great work. They clean our beaches, harbors, and some right-of-ways. They are transparent. Their IRS 990s are easily accessible. Their financial statements are all posted. The numbers in their financial statements even add up correctly. I think you know why I was forced to say that. Clean Ocean Access posts all their corporate and individual donors, even the executive director's salary. No complaints about this organization, how it is run, or its transparency. That being said, Clean Ocean Access has this plastic bag ban wrong. We do not need another law that bans only one type of bag while actually protecting dozens of other bags. It is not Portsmouth's job to give Clean Ocean Access an easy win to brag about. Clean Ocean Access should concentrate on education, which I think they're doing a good job at. They are good at educating, and that is the long-term successful solution to almost any problem. Tom and I own over 2,000 feet of waterfront property along Narragansett Bay. We have been cleaning the beach there ourselves for 10 years. We have found glass bottles, metal cans, plastic bottles, children's toys, clothing, Dunkin' Donuts cups, and enough fishing tackle to start our own store. I cannot even remember having picked up a plastic shopping bag on the beach. The plastic pollution problem is a serious problem, but can be addressed much better through proper education. If you take a drive along Wapping Road, you will notice tens of thousands of square feet of single-use plastic covering bales of hay. Visit any of the boatyards in Portsmouth and see hundreds of thousands of square feet of single-use plastic covering our boats for the winter. You might respond that these sheets of plastic can be recycled. Can does not mean that they are recycled. I have spent many weeks each spring and fall for the last 45 years in boatyards. Most of that plastic is not recycled. In April of 2003, I removed the last 12,000 square feet of single-use plastic from my boat. I ordered a reusable canvas cover that was said to have about 10 years lifespan. In November of 2017, we installed this cover on my boat for the 15th year. Since 2003, I've saved almost 20,000 square feet that's half an acre, of single-use plastic from the environment and over $10,000 for myself. Education works. Clean Ocean Access needs to embrace that rather than to promote a very narrow regulation. Now here comes the fierce part. I only have one more comment. On November 13th, 2017, this very council passed an ordinance requiring the residents of Portsmouth to purchase tens of thousands of truly single-use plastic bags whose only purpose is to keep track of the amount of trash we use. To add insult to injury, these single-use plastic bags are sold in rolls of 5, wrapped in a small plastic bag that itself is not reusable, and whose only purpose is to cover those 5 single plastic bags, making a neater package. Passing this ordinance tonight, only 105 days after that last ordinance, is nothing short of hypocrisy. Thank you. Remember, that's her, not me.
Yes. Thank you, Tom. Good news.
Good evening. My name is Monica DeAngelis. I live at 91 Lilac Lane. I'm a marine mammal biologist, so I can share in the statistics and everything that we've heard here on that. I'm also a mother, and I'm also president of Clean Ocean Access. And I have been here before speaking to the council and to the residents on this topic before, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak again. You've obviously done your research, you've taken your time to think this through, and that's very much appreciated. I think everybody here in town and elsewhere has been educated on this because of the efforts that have been made here. So education is something that is a priority for many of us sitting in this room, including Clean Ocean Access. So I thank you for that. It would appear that no product is under greater legislation and legislative debate right now than single-use plastic bags when it comes to the environment. I moved here from California and can give you many stories on how that has come to pass there. Viewpoints vary on the effectiveness of bans versus the economic costs, and we've heard many things tonight. What I would like to say is I would ask that the council take a look at the people that are here in this room and the passion that they have about this and about their town and about how much they care about Portsmouth and Aquidneck Island. And yes, it may be considered an inconvenience to bring a bag with you, but it's a habit-changing thing, and it will lead to bigger and greater things. And wouldn't it be wonderful if Aquidneck Island was the grand educator to the rest of the world about how to do things correctly when it comes to single-use plastic bags? We have an opportunity to make a change at a local level, knowing that we will influence the environment beyond the local level. We owe it to our children and future Portsmouth residents to leave our planet better than the way we found it. Surely the environmental benefits of single-use plastic bag will outweigh the minor inconvenience and small costs that shoppers might incur before they get into the habit, and I'd like to repeat that again, a habit that we are changing in carrying reusable plastic bags and reusable bags. So I thank you, and my daughter would like to say a few words.
Absolutely.
Hello, my name is Annabella Barber. I live at 91 Lilac Lane, and I am a student at Portsmouth Middle School. Last year, during the summer, I went to a camp in Bristol where we sailed out to an island called Prudence Island. Prudence Island is the place where all of the trash from everywhere in Rhode Island washes up, including Portsmouth. Plastic bags were all over the beach. The other campers and I found so many plastic bags encrusted in seaweed on the beach, even I didn't know what it was at first until I looked closer. The sight was concerning, and I think that we should do something about it. Please consider banning plastic bags. Thank you.
Very nice.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Kristen Murphy. I'm a Portsmouth resident. I live at 154 Corey's Lane. I'm a homeowner here in town. I'm also a marine biologist and an oceanographer. And I've spent my whole career traveling around the world, looking at the marine environment and trying to protect it. My very first experience as a marine scientist, still a volunteer and a young student, was to work at a marine mammal rescue and rehabilitation center. And one of the first, before I was even old enough to be able to have the permission slip signed to touch a marine mammal, I was able to see the 5-gallon container we had of plastic bags and plastic debris that was the cause of death in a plastic ingestion case for a marine mammal. That really stuck with me. And I have spent 20 years educating people about that, and education is very important. That's what brought some of my young colleagues up here to talk to you, but it's not enough. That is enough to bring people to come here to ask you for change, but what is needed is an ordinance. And that kind of ordinance protects businesses who want to do the right thing. We know this is the right thing to do. We've seen it be effective. We know the damaging effects of plastics. We all really value the beauty of our marine environment, its economic impact, the impact on our health. It's just a small bit of discomfort to adjust to a new habit. But our question is whether or not we're willing to overcome those short-term challenges for the long-term gain. My young colleagues came up here and told you that they don't want to pay for our mistakes. And we have a responsibility to them to set up the infrastructure and legislation to be able to change the habits of our community and to protect the businesses that want to do the right thing. Because right now, if a business in Portsmouth wants to stop using plastic bags, they're at a disadvantage because other businesses don't. But when you unify the whole community and you unify the whole island so it is commonality among all of our businesses, you protect those that want to do the right thing, and also don't change your ordinance and weaken it so that other people can take advantage of the loophole and take advantages of those businesses that want to do the right thing and want to institute a strong ordinance. So I urge you to pass the ordinance and make it strong to protect our businesses, to protect our community, and to protect those young enough that they can't yet vote for themselves, but are going to inherit what you leave them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sam Lower. Several years ago, I read the book Tracking Trash, Flotsam, Jetsam, and the Science of Ocean Motion. This book takes the reader through the extent and impacts of trash throughout the world's oceans. The amount of trash, specifically plastic, found in the ocean and its negative impact is quite simply overwhelming. After conducting some more research on the subject, I found that the single-use plastic bags that grocery and other stores often provide to customers significantly contribute to the plastic trash found in the ocean. The single-use plastic bags are lightweight and easily carried by the wind, which is why they are often seen hanging in trees, polluting the landscape, and many eventually find their way into waterways, causing entanglement and ingestion dangers to wildlife. A study done by the EPA shows that more than 50% of dead turtles have plastic bags in their stomachs. The bags block their digestive tracts, and the buoyancy forces them to float, making it impossible for them to dive for the food. Therefore, they starve to death. Now, in addition to polluting the ocean and the land and endangering wildlife, plastic bags are also made of non-renewable resources, including crude oil, gas, and coal. According to the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. goes through 100 billion plastic shopping bags annually. An estimated 12 million barrels of oil is required to make that many bags. This leaves an eco footprint that is not only enormous, but more importantly, avoidable. There are a lot of problems in this world that are difficult for us to impact. This is not one of them. Passing this plastic bag ordinance is a no-brainer. It is not a hardship for anyone to use paper or preferably reusable bags, and it will have no negative impact on businesses. Eliminating single bag use will decrease environmental pollution, mitigate dangers to wildlife, and decrease our eco-footprint. I therefore encourage the Portsmouth Town Council members to do their part by voting in favor of the plastic bags ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lola Herrera. I'm a neighbor of Newport, and I'm on behalf of the Energy and Environmental Commission in Newport. And I think everybody say a lot of things. I'm not going to say statistics or other things. I'm also oceanographer, and then I know really well what is happening with our world. I came from the other part of Europe in the Mediterranean that our coast is really, really bad. I mean, we are losing our biodiversity, we are losing our the clarity of the transparency of our waters, and we are finding it, instead of fish, boots or other kind of things, or plastic. So the only thing that I want to say or add to the audience is that in our committee, we are working, well, we passed this, I mean, we are now out of the plastic bag, but it's not only that. There are more things, and there are more things of plastics, and they talk about loopholes and centimeters or millimeters, so we have to avoid that those loopholes are there. And the other thing that I just want to add is that after the plastic bag will come the straw and will come the styrofoam thing. I just want that people know that this is an epidemic, what we are suffering now, and that our conflicts in the world, they are going to be because of pollution of the water, because pollution of the contaminants that are in the water, and where we are going to put our garbage. In which landfills, if we are putting all our garbage under the rug. So it's something that we have to think like an adults, like we have to start in some point. So I encourage you to pass this ordinance in Portsmouth.
Good evening. I hope that you'll forgive me for arriving so late and presuming to speak when I haven't heard what's already been said. My name is Susan Taylor, and I sit on the Newport City Council. So perhaps I can speak to you as one counselor to other counselors. And you've heard a great deal about the very compelling reasons, environmental reasons and moral reasons, if you will, for eliminating the use of the single-use plastic bag. But let me talk to you about other concerns that you may have, which is that as a sitting councilor, we have to be concerned that we represent all of the people in our jurisdiction. We represent the businesses as well as the individuals. And perhaps you're familiar with the disgruntled phone call from a constituent who cannot understand why you are or aren't doing something that they wish you would do differently. And out of these phone calls come a lot of good ideas, and sometimes people need to vent a bit, but I'm very familiar with them. I wanted to let you know that I haven't gotten one since we passed the ordinance. What we did in Newport was we passed it in March of last year. We had it not going into effect until November 1. We wanted to have a good long rollout period because we were the first community on Aquidneck Island to pass this ban. We hated calling it a ban. We felt ban was a negative word, and we were trying to come up with something different. And so we had 10,000 reusable bags printed with the logo of Reduce, Reuse, Recycle and the City of Newport logo. And we actually had a private donor who donated to make that possible, which was wonderful. There's the opportunity for corporate sponsorship to produce those bags, but you may not wish to go that route. You may wish to have the Portsmouth logo on the bag. What we did then was a group of us, I see several in this room, we rolled out our education campaign to bring the City of Newport on board with what was going to be enforced come November 1. And we had more fun than we ever anticipated. We had people coming up to us when we would have a table out, at many sort of, there was the Oyster Festival in May, there are farmers markets, there are just various events, where you could go and set up a table and people would come by, they could collect their reusable plastic bag, or reusable bag, not plastic, and People were very, very supportive. We did have calls and inquiries from businesses wondering exactly what would be allowed under the banning of the single-use plastic bag, because remember, the heavier plastic bags are not banned. It's only the type that you see on the floor here. And it was really, it was the most fun thing that I have done as a counselor was be active with trying to roll out this educational period. What we found was that businesses were really embracing this as a marketing thing. It's a little bit like they're ahead of the curve, and if it were the whole of Aquidneck Island, it really would be pretty cool. I have been curious whether the businesses in Portsmouth have noticed any kind of a bump in their business since November 1st. It seems to me that possibly if people were really annoyed enough at not being able to carry their groceries out in a plastic bag, they might be coming up to Clements. They might be shopping in Portsmouth more, and so I'm curious about that. I don't know whether you have any statistics, but we have not had any disgruntled calls from any businesses in Newport, and with the many issues that I do receive calls about, it has perhaps surprised me that we didn't get a single one. I do recommend the long rollout period, and it also brings the community together to be talking about what is coming. I would be so happy to take any questions if I can be of any help. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Hello again, neighbors. My name is Chris Reeves. I live at 154 Corey's Lane. I've been here before and told you guys that I'm originally from San Diego, California. I moved here last May because we bought a house. We wanted to live in Portsmouth because it's beautiful, it's got a good school system. And shortly thereafter, I started volunteering on the Town Conservation Council because I do believe in serving my community and helping my neighbors. To that effect, I'm new to New England-ish. I lived in California almost my whole life, with the exception of living in Hawaii, so I had to deal with new things like basements and that awful thing called winter. So I don't know anything about like house heating, plumbing. In San Diego, we don't have much in the way of lawns that we don't cultivate ourselves. It's not like here where you have to battle it back. And so I've learned to rely on the advice of experts like Steve, who comes over to mow our lawn, or the plumber that had to install a new boiler because I didn't even know what that was. In circumstances like this, when we need advice, we ask experts, which is why I started volunteering for the Conservation Commission. I've been studying plastic pollution for over 10 years. I've been giving public lectures on it. I have taught marine science, and I'm a science writer now. With the exception, perhaps, of Dr. Sharp and Dave in this room, I'm probably the most qualified to be talking about this, which is why I've given my advice to the town's Conservation Commission. We've heard from lots of other experts tonight. I think some of our smaller citizens here did plenty of research, and it was thorough, and it was true. I've got just a few notes here, if you'll bear with me for a sec. In the past, we have been expected to rely on education, rely on personal recycling to fix the problem of plastic pollution, and clearly that is not working. Those are deliberate marketing schemes put forth by the plastic industry, which is effectively the oil industry. They have very deep pockets and a big lobbying arm known as the American Chemistry Council, made up of members like DuPont, Dow Chemical, 3M, Exxon, Mobil, and just about every place that a plastic bag ban has been proposed, there has been an effort to squash that, even on the local level, including right here in Rhode Island, in Barrington, when there was a proposal to even discuss the plastic bag ban. The OCC sent one of their lobbyists from Washington, D.C., because it's important enough to them to try to fight that and spend the money to do it. That has happened here. You may not have heard about it. There was a person from well, one of the arguments that we hear sometimes is that compostable plastic or biodegradable plastic is an option in lieu of using single-use actual plastic bags. The problem with those is that they are themselves plastic. They're just a different form. There is no industry standard for compostable or biodegradable. The company that contacted the City Council here specifically sells biodegradable bags, but they called under the guise of educating us about our plastic bag ban. And if you look on their website and you go to the very, very bottom in the tiniest tiny print possible, it says that their plastic bags are only compostable in an industrial composter, which does not exist in Rhode Island. This is an industrial machine that uses heat and enzymes and an incredible amount of energy to break down plastic that is supposedly made of corn or is supposed to be compostable or biodegradable. And it doesn't actually work. Even those Taterware, the dishware that you get from like restaurants and grocery stores, it says it's made of cornstarch or potatoes, that just comes out of those machines looking clean. So I've heard some arguments from a few people about not finding plastic bags on their property. That's a single property. That's hardly a comprehensive study of our town or our island or our waterways. That particular testimony and ones that I've heard in the past, in fact, from Mr. Kessin about the little nip bottles that end up under the bus stop benches, I can't stand those things either. I will say that it seems like you guys are in favor of banning all single-use plastic bags, and if that's the case and someone wants to lead the charge on that, I am more than happy to be by your side and help you with that. But I think that we have to start now, here, tonight, with plastic bags. We have the opportunity to make a dent, to follow the advice of our young future voters, to follow the advice of the overwhelming support that you have in the room. Also, the survey that says that 66% of the people that were interested in bothering to take their time to fill out that survey in town don't want to have plastic bags anymore. Multiple cities have done this all across the country, and you've heard all this testimony tonight. There has been reports of one place, one only, that said that there was any kind of financial hardship in surrounding areas from a town in California that banned single-use plastic bags. That study was funded by the American Chemistry Council, and it surveyed 10 stores and used data from 3. Funded comprehensive study as well. There is no evidence that anyone is suffering any kind of financial hardship. If people wanted to go to another town right now to purchase their groceries as opposed to going to Clements because Clements is thinking about endorsing this, they can already do that. Clements is also giving out plastic bags right now, so if they wanted to get the same bags, they can still do that there. There's no difference right now. Change is hard, as we know, but it's a lot harder to clean up this mess afterwards. And we talk about financial hardships for businesses, but we don't talk about the financial hardship on us. We are the people that are expected to clean up this mess. Other people, big corporations that do not live in this town and that money does not come to this town, are making a ton of money off selling plastic bags to us, so we are expected to continue to use them, and then we are also expected to foot the bill for recycling and cleanup, and whatever environmental damage comes our way after that. Choosing to ignore the facts from a variety of testimony of experts in this room, from the will of the people via the survey, from the will of the future voters that came here tonight and told you that what they wanted, in favor of hearsay and in favor of speculation about hardships, about the health of our waterways, and making decisions about the health of our children is irresponsible at best and malicious at worst. Please pass this ban.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Theodore Pease, 85 Glen Road. I'm the chairman of the Solid Waste Recycling Committee here in town. I would like to thank the town council for providing a hearing to discuss this topic. And I know that you all are sitting here thinking about November and like, wow, I voted for pay-as-you-throw bags, and I advocated that we go to pay-as-you-throw. I should be public enemy number one here. But I wouldn't want to conflate those two issues. A pay-as-you-throw bag is merely a funding mechanism to fund our enterprise fund for solid waste and recycling disposal at Johnson, Rhode Island. So what I want to point out is if you buy a bag for $2, $1.25 or $1, you're probably not going to just let it blow out of the back of your pickup truck. So these bags, however, really have no cost associated with them. I'm probably not going to be as careful with these bags. They're provided to me for free. It's just a mindset that we have when we spend money for something, we're not just going to let it drift away and decompose in our waterways. So I just wanted to point that out because I know there is some conflation going on with that issue. Secondly, a pay-as-you-throw bag, because they come in multiple sizes, 33-gallon, 15-gallon, or 8-gallon, you can simply stub them out one for one. I mean, we're not creating more bags. So I don't want you to have a guilty conscience based on that vote. This is a full pun intended. This moment is probably a watershed moment for all of humanity as we try to wean ourselves off of single-use items. The single-use items externalize the negative social and environmental costs onto society by the manufacturer. The manufacturer reap all the profit. However, they bear none of the risks of a toxic ecosystem. So let's join the other island community, Portsmouth. You can join them, Jamestown, Middletown, and Newport, and keep our town of Portsmouth and the Taconic River beautiful. Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Donna Baressa. I live in Portsmouth at 51 Cornell Drive. I'm here just as a consumer. I'm a big supporter of Clean Ocean Access, but I'm here as a consumer. I do not shop in only one town. I shop in Portsmouth, I shop in Middletown, I shop in Newport. So I have been trained to use the reusable plastic bags for a long time. I feel a sense of pride when I walk into Clements with my 3 or 4 reusable bags, and I feel like I'm doing my part to help educate the other people that are in that store to see that you can do that easily. And I cringe, quite frankly, when I see people coming out of the store with a huge cart with 5 or 6 plastic bags that are all double bagged. And actually every one of the reusable bags that I own were donated by stores. Clothing stores in Newport will give you, they give you reusable plastic bags with their logo on it. So we are one community, we're a small community, and I don't believe that everybody in Portsmouth will be in shock over the passing of this. I think it's going to be a lot easier of a transition than people think it is. Thank you.
Good evening, Town Council. My name is Chris Clarendon, and full disclosure, I'm not a Portsmouth resident. However, I used to have a lease with the town of Portsmouth to grow oysters underneath the Glen Manor House dock, which I did for 15 years. So it's nice to see you all again, or some of you again. Having been on the water for 15 years, pretty much day in and day out, I would say that the most prevalent pollutant I saw in the Secana River were these plastic bags. Probably followed closely secondly by Dunkin' Donuts styrofoam cups, but that's a whole nother issue which I hope to fight later, as well as hopefully getting, with Dave's help, a plastic bag ban ordinance in Tiverton, which we're going to work on. So I encourage you and I urge you to pass this ban on plastic bags. They are much more than just a nuisance in your waterways, and your waterways should be sacrosanct to you, because that's really what your town is about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to get up and comment on the proposed ordinance? I know one gentleman got up and went outside, but I don't know if he's coming back. Okay. Give it one more try. Dave, you want to come up and wrap it up on your end? I know you want to do and even when Dave is finished, if there's anybody else who wants to come up afterwards, please do so.
I just want to address really 2 points. First, I want to say thank you to everyone. You know, people ask, well, what's going to happen? And I always say, it doesn't, it matters, right? But it's the process, right? We're all part of this. We're all part of the community. We have different opinions. Our differences are our greatest strengths, and we've got to work together. We've got to do things locally. That's incredibly important in this day and age. And I see it happening in Portsmouth. I see it in Newport, Middletown, and it's fantastic. The question came up about why are there so many exclusions in the ordinance? And I think Councilor Pedro brought this up at different times, and I just want to address that the spirit of having the exclusions is that we go after the bag that is causing the biggest problem first. It's the easiest one to address. It will have the highest impact. The opportunity to go back and address the ordinance to add more restrictions and eliminate more plastic bags will certainly be available. The town of Middletown, when they passed their ordinance on May 8th, and it went live on November 1st, shortly beforehand, they actually had to make an adjustment to the ordinance, so it actually didn't go live until December 1st. And people were like, oh, that's too bad. And it's like, I said, well, it's actually a good thing, because as a community, we're going to have to adapt, and we're going to have to change. So the fact that it went live a month later was actually a good thing, because the ordinance that we passed tonight is an ordinance that we're going to have to change at some point later on. The question came up about bragging rights, and I don't know really where it comes from. Clean Ocean Access formed in 2006 because we had issues when we got out of the water after surfing at Ruggles, and we were told we weren't able to park there. And that summer, the beaches were closed, and we were furious about it. And then we found out on August 29th that the state stops testing the water all winter long, and yet we surf in the water all winter long. So people got together, there was an issue, and we said we've got to do something about it. And we had three choices. We said we either would do absolutely nothing, which we had basically been doing. The second one was to join a like-minded organization. And the third was to create our own group. So we had several meetings. And after the meetings and inviting people together, it was decided that we would create our own organization. So it's really a community effort. We're focused on eliminating marine debris from the ocean. It requires behavior change. It requires some advocacy. It requires some laws. We're focused on water quality, both the kind that you drink and the kind that you swim in. And we're focused on protecting public access, because every person on this island, as well as this state, should have an equal opportunity to enjoy the shoreline. It's in our state constitution. So those are the things that we're working on. And I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. That's why we're here. That's what we're doing. That's how we've come together. I look around this room, I know so many people. It's because they care about the environment. I can't tell you about how many friendships that I've seen come together because of the work that we're doing. So appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Hang on there, David.
Sure.
Mr. Aguirre.
Quick question on the enforcement part. There's a lot of references to any person that violates, these provisions. I mean, should that really be the commercial entity? Because I mean, if it's the commercial entity that's responsible, not the cashier, correct?
Right. So I think in the ordinance in section B6, where it talks about the violations, this is geared towards the retail establishment.
But what I'm getting at is the way this ordinance is before us tonight, and that's a draft.
Right.
All the violations reference, like if it's a person that violates it, that should be clarified to be whatever the commercial enterprise is, correct? Because we're not going to go after the specific cashier if there's an issue. You're going to go after Clements. You're going to go after Rite Aid. You're going to go after Dollar General. Is that right?
No, that's absolutely true. It does, trying to find,
it's on,
in section B, it referenced the person charged shall be given the opportunity. So it's the person responsible for the retail establishment.
Right. Well, I'm going by A.
It's in A, too.
It's in A.
Okay.
It's in the
It's
initial
first-
chapter.
The person charged with the violation.
I would defer
Any
to-
person who violates any of the provisions.
Right. I would defer to the town solicitor for the language to reference that this is really referencing the retail establishment.
I think we can
work
go
on that
through that
afterwards.
after, because I've
Yeah.
got some things, too.
There's a definition of business establishment, you could use that.
Okay. Was that it for you, Ken?
Just one other quick question, because I heard it a couple of times tonight. People were making reference, or a few folks made reference to statewide legislation in Rhode Island?
Right.
Is that moving forward? Because that was something we talked about the last time you were here.
Sure. I can report on what I know, and it might not be the most up-to-date information. In the fall, I met with members from the General Assembly, and I explained to them where we are, and I explained that it would probably be a good idea that we reintroduce a statewide ordinance. And at that time in the fall, in that conversation, my understanding was Representative Miller from Cranston was going to reintroduce the bill. I wish I had a better answer, but in some regards, I don't, because we're really trying to put our focus here on Aquidneck Island. I could spend more time investing in a statewide ban, but instead we're going to invest more time in taking care of Melville Park. So we try to make these decisions because we're really invested in the community. My friends at Save the Bay, Clean Water Action, they probably know more about the statewide level, but I know that our responsibility to our community is to really focus on what's happening here.
Mr. Kessler.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mulligolf, I voted against this ordinance, the initiation of this ordinance the last time. I'm pretty sure my position, and it still is today, that Clean Ocean Access, as they move through community, have chances to make advantages or advancements within the ordinance as they move to get rid of the restrictions. This ordinance that's passed today is still the original one that was passed, the very first one, with no restriction changes?
The draft you have in front of you tonight was provided back from...
Right, but when it was presented in Newport, it's the same ordinance with the same restrictions?
For the most part. I mean, the areas that each town has an opportunity to address is really on the enforcement side. Some communities have actually put in wording that it would be...
But you didn't change any exemptions?
No, no.
Again, it's not going to be a very... encouraging that I'm going to vote against this again because of the narrow focus of Ocean Access. I think as you move through the community, you should have eliminated the exemptions as you came. You were gathering strength. You've got a room full. You've had that everywhere you go.
All right.
So instead of changing everybody's ordinances, if you strengthen this ordinance and eliminated exemptions in this ordinance, it's easier to go back to Newport and do away with more single-use bags. I think the narrow focus of Ocean Access, and I had this conversation with you during the last time you were here, there's not one exemption that changed.
Right.
It's not enough. So I'm going to vote this down. It'll still pass.
Right.
But it's because you won't pick up the next piece and eliminate another use.
Right. So I appreciate...
I stated this to you when you stood in front of me the last time.
Sure.
And this many people weren't in the room. And you didn't pick up the action item to eliminate one more exemption. And I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm not happy with that you didn't move forward. You're just moving across.
So, Councilor Kessin, I appreciate your concern, and I understand your perspective.
It's still going to pass.
Right.
I think your expectations are too low.
Right.
And I think you need to change that.
I kind of agree with you.
But you didn't change an ordinance.
Right.
You didn't come to me with a changed ordinance. And give me something to bite on and say, yep, I'm with you. You're moving up. You're not moving up. We had this conversation 3 months ago.
What you're describing, and what I sincerely appreciate, is leadership. What we were asked by businesses in Portsmouth, as well as some of the representatives here tonight from other communities is, and it was in our initial position statement, is we wanted to pass a uniform and consistent ordinance. CVS is a great company. I don't have a lot of sympathy. They're a big company. They're very profitable. They have a business in each municipality on Aquidneck Island. By passing a uniform and consistent ordinance, it all gets us to the same baseline. The opportunity to strengthen the ordinance is there, and we will do that next.
And you'll see me vote for that, but not for this one.
Right. We've got to start somewhere, and I think what you heard tonight is where people want to start. These are the bags that are causing the problems. These are the bags we should fix tonight, and we'll come back and we'll tighten up the ordinance. But for businesses that have stores in multiple towns, we've got to make sure that it's uniform and consistent. That's fair, and that's why we did not address to change the ordinance. We will, as Lola Herrera pointed out, we'll be back to talk about foam cups. We'll be addressing straws. We'll be addressing Mylar balloon releases. There's a lot of work ahead of us. We've got to do the work now to take care of the environment, and this is just the first step.
I think it would have been better served the public that if you stepped through each town and did a little change and get rid of an exemption, you would be further ahead than you are today.
You probably are right, but in respect to the businesses, we wanted to keep it uniform and consistent.
I understand that.
Anything else, Paul?
No, I don't.
Dr. Ryan?
Just a couple of things. First of all, yeah, that was the point that struck me, is that you want an ordinance that's the same across communities, so that maybe we can do some cooperation with the other communities when we come to start tightening this up to exclude other sorts of plastics. The other thing I haven't heard tonight, yes, these bags don't degrade, but they do leach out chemicals. And although plastic bags are made primarily of polyethylene, there are always solvents and stabilizers added to these during their manufacture, many of which have hormonally active properties. We've seen over the last 40 years an increase in the rates of childhood leukemia and lymphoma, the rates of autism, the rates of other developmental abnormalities in our children, which are strongly suspected to be due to the release of plastic additives and plastic-related chemicals into the environment. I think anything that we can do, even a small thing, to reduce the amount of plastics being released into the environment is a positive step, and I think we would be irresponsible not to take it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. David, I thank you for a moment. Is there anybody else who got the courage to speak or come back up and speak?
No courage needed. I applaud Portsmouth for your leadership, and I'm just here to say that I would be completely happy to give you credit for your leadership on expanding the ordinance, and I would be very happy to have Newport work together with you. Let's see what we can do island-wide to move this forward, and with the next step, let's do it for every municipality at the same time, and so that it's still consistent for the businesses island-wide. But I'm so delighted to hear what you have to say tonight, Mr. Kessin. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Susan Taylor.
Again, I'd like to offer my services if you guys decide to go forward with any further single-use plastic bans. Though voting no in favor or in the interest of the public seems wrong when the public is here telling you exactly what their interest is. This is a very easily attainable amount of plastic that we can get rid of, and choosing no is simply the wrong choice. Thanks.
My name is Megan McQueston. I live at 15 King Philip Street here in Portsmouth. I come to you with a very different perspective and actually haven't really listened to much of the plastic bag war, apparently, that's going on in Portsmouth. But I can stand before you today and say I spent 6 hours in surgery with a very small cat that ate one of those ugly, awful plastic bags that's in the center of the floor. And tonight, there's a small child in the town of Warwick that will not have that cat because it didn't make it. I do support and understand Councillor Kessin's information that was provided this evening, because it doesn't start with just one plastic bag, it's all of them. Let Portsmouth mark the map and set the standard for the island and do it all. Start today, change the ordinance, shoot for the stars, not just the moon. You take everything. As I said, there's a small child, the age of 5, that tonight has to go home without Fluffy.
Anyone else? This is where I have fun and say it 3 times. So that, unlike other communities, we don't do a first and second reading, although we could. If there are changes that we would like to have Mr. Gavin make and bring it back to us, we could do that. We could also make those changes here tonight if we would like to. What we wouldn't do is probably have a second public hearing. We would just have a discussion with the council as to the changes. So, I've asked once, actually I probably asked twice. This is going to be my 3rd time. Anybody else want to speak? Anybody else gain the courage to come up and speak in either direction? Going once, going twice. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. For the record, Senate Bill 2354, introduced by Senators Miller, Sosnowski, Ruggiero, Coyne, and Lombardo, seeks to eliminate Plastic Waste Reduction Act, but it only does it to stores that have a $5 million annual gross retail sales volume, which would be if you're part of a chain, so with CVS or Rite Aid, Dollar General. I don't know if that would include Clements. I don't know what their volume is. I'm guessing that between the two stores, they possibly are. But that is there. It's been introduced. It hasn't had a hearing as of yet. So if you wanted to follow that, you can go to the state's website and look at it and follow along with it. It does have a provision that states that local municipalities can opt out if they wanted to, which is odd, but that is out there. And I would assume, and I didn't look it up, I'm assuming that there's one on the House side as well. If not, there would be eventually. So, Ms. Pedro, I will start with you because you said you had a couple of items to change.
Why do I always have to start with the big stuff?
Well, you threw it out there.
Oh, boy. Well,
Unless we want to tackle changing persons to establishments, or Mr. Mr. Gavin, you okay with that? Changing that to business establishment? Okay. So let's cover the 3 or 4 places that would need to be changed.
I think it's in enforcement.
It's enforcement and penalties in the first
paragraph.
First paragraph, any business establishment or entity. Should we?
yeah, because in prohibited acts, it says no business establishment, and then it somehow changes, and then B, all business establishments, and then somehow it changes in C to person in enforcement.
You see all that, Mr. Gavin?
So you want to change in enforcement, change it to business establishment?
Business establishment or entity, not
Yeah, everywhere
the
it says
individual
the person.
As Mr. Aguirre mentioned, we don't want to penalize Sandy for handing a plastic bag when that's all she has to hand out. So that would go in the first paragraph. Second paragraph, A, warning letter shall inform the, again, business establishment entity.
There's a couple in there.
Yeah.
So where it says business establishment, you want to say, or entity? And in enforcement, you want to take out person and change it to business establishment or entity?
Well, to me, it just...
Business establishment.
Yeah.
But if there's a non-business establishment that goes to, I don't know, does a fair down at, I guess they are a business, but does a fair at the Glen, let's say there's a fair and they're using plastic bags to let people carry their stuff home in at a farmer's market. Do we want farmers markets handing out plastic bags in town too?
Well, yeah, and that's a big question, and
And they're
someone
not-
emailed me about that. Like, suppose someone's having a yard sale and is,
It says business, it
You know.
excludes that in business establishment.
Okay.
And it excludes non.
I'm just shotgunning here, so if anybody else wants to jump in, please feel free.
And it specifically says business establishment does not include sale of goods at yard sales, tag sales, et cetera, under the definition of business establishment.
They're just going for the big fish.
Okay.
but that's why we want to change person, because it doesn't say business establishment and enforcement. So I'm good with that.
I mean,
just
the definition of business establishment includes, it says, or any other legal entity.
Okay.
So I think. we
That's
should
fine.
change person to business establishment.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's why we have you here. You're the lawyer. Keep us in line. All right, so that would be underneath first paragraph.
38?
Yeah, 32638, first paragraph. Paragraph A, again, business establishment. And then you would have to tie him or her personally. To the business establishment. And the warning letter shall inform the business establishment charged, the nature. You can find all these, right? Yeah. And then in paragraph B, again, person, business establishment.
Yes, appears 3 times in paragraph A, once in paragraph B.
And that seems to be all. Ms. Bader, do you have other changes
I
there?
do
or-
have one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to change under hardship variance, paragraph A. Says the town administrator may grant a variance from the requirements of this chapter. I'd like to change that to the town council because I think that if someone's going to get a variance, I think it needs to be a public meeting, and I think there should be transparency, and people should be able to come and voice, whether or not they feel that a certain business may get a variance or not. Because if we give this power to the town administrator, it's not going to be done in public. So, I don't foresee a lot of hardship variances, so, I think we can handle that task.
And I don't think Mr.
Rayner
Rayner's going to argue with you.
will mind, taking that off his plate, exactly.
Please.
So, anyway, I'd like to make a motion to change that, and if we do change that, then I guess we would delete D, the administrator shall prepare a written report of findings. Because the, granting or denial of the variance will be a public meeting, so.
So you want to change that to word that the council?
We would just delete that, because I don't think you need a written report if it's in public anyway, because it'll be in the minutes and, whatever.
You could also say, if you wanted to, that the town council shall state its findings to support it. Or just delete it.
I think, I'd like to just delete it.
Okay.
One less thing.
So,
Anyway, I made a motion.
Second.
Thank you.
so the motion is to change town administrator to town council and delete item D underneath 326-39. Does that encompass everything, Ms. Bader?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any discussion?
Just one last question.
Well, we want to vote on this before? So that I don't get confused, we'll vote on this one, then we'll go to the next thing. All right, so all those in favor of that amendment? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So that was to change town administrator to town council, then remove section D. Yeah.
Could we get one on the...
Yes, change the persons to business establishment where needed under item number 326-39, changing the person, 38, excuse me, 326-38, changing any person.
To business establishment, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Okay, Mr. Aguirre. Sorry, folks, this is how the sausage is made.
I kind of liked the idea of the rollout period, the 6 to 9 months, something along that line.
That is in item 326-40.
What is it?
326-40, this chapter shall become effective upon passage, provided, however, that the establishment shall be stayed until, pick a date, November 1st, December 1st, February 1st, pick a date. That's what we would stick in there.
Jeez.
Me personally, I don't think that a November 1st or December 1st date was a good one, just because it's holiday season and people are gearing up with a lot of bags. But we have roughly, essentially 6 large establishments that would have to comply with this. That may be stretching it. Well, 7, excuse me. Your 2 Cumbies, Clements, 2 Walgreens, soon to be 1. Ace. CVS, Dollar General. Did I pass 7 yet? Anybody keeping score?
September 1st is a Saturday. Does that matter?
No.
Just thinking.
It just, we also need to give enough time for businesses to deplete their stock and bring in new stock. So.
All right, then I'll just go with, make a motion to make the effective date September 1st, 2018.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Mr. Gleason.
Mr. President, just for clarification, unless I'm not seeing it correctly, on page 2, 326-36, in the first paragraph and the third paragraph, C, it references a 326B-3. I don't see that clearly labeled.
I gotta change that. We started out doing it in one format, and then we changed it to this, so that, I'll correct that.
So you're gonna, that'll fall under the definitions, those will have A, B, C, et cetera?
It'll be the third section of the, excuse me, should be the third section, 34, should be 35.
32.6/35.
Yeah.
So that's understood that would be part of this document.
Thank you.
You want to word that as a motion somehow so we can, Kevin, do you know what
Sure. I make a motion that we clarify under 326-36, paragraph A, where it mentions 326B-3, and paragraph C, same as above, to be clarified by the town solicitor.
Just change that section.
Change to 326.
Change it to
36-35.
Right.
That's wrong with definitions.
Yeah, the definitions.
Second.
So we're changing 326B-3 to 326-35 in those two areas.
A and C.
Okay? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. President,
Yes, please.
if I may, I have no doubt that this ordinance is going to pass tonight. I worked with Mr. McLaughlin on the cigarette butt ban at our beaches, and I thought that was important. The plastic bag one, I'm on the fence on that one, personally. This came out of my kitchen closet. I consider myself a responsible recycler. You know, like Mr. Kessin said, I don't know why this one right here is allowed and these other ones aren't. But these will end up at the resale. I'll walk into Clements with these, and these go into the recycling bag. And I've been recycling since the mid-'70s. You know, it all comes down to some of the statements that I wrote from the speakers. And the first speaker said that we need to lead by example. Well, I don't know if those bags on Wapping Road were picked up by the person that took pictures of them. I hope they were. But we all need to do our part here. We all need to recycle more. We all need to not throw things out of our car. And I would submit that probably 100% of the people in this room are people like myself that are recycling. But it is a restriction. I do use these bags for other purposes, and they do end up at the landfill. I'm not throwing them at the beach. One other comment was, we talked about how our boat industry is important here on the island. Boat owners, are they responsible? Are they throwing the bags in the water? I don't know. I don't know where all these bags are coming from, but if people were responsible, and I don't have that ability to wave a magic wand and make everybody responsible, we wouldn't be here. We talked about plastic in general. We talked about bags. You know, I hope it goes further, because if you look at the results of the survey, you know, together with the bags is the plastic bottles, the glass bottles, the cans, lids, straws, and stirrers. And I would suspect the plastic and the glass bottles would be a higher number if they weren't sitting at the bottom of the bay. They're not all rolling up on the shore. So this is a good start. For me, it has restrictions. I think the education part could have been better. You know, I would like to, I know this is blasphemous, but I think that a place like Clements Market should be able to sell me a plastic bag. Why do I say that? One comment that was, these bags are free, so people take it for granted. Well, if you pay for something, chances are you're going to deal with it properly. I'm not paying for these, and I'm dealing with them properly.
To your point there, David, I think they are these are not sellable. However, the thicker bags, like at an Aldi's, where you pay 10 cents a bag, they're still, Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Aldi still has plastic bags, but they're the thicker, heavier ones.
Well, what I meant was, if I'm going to the line and I'm buying my groceries, I think I should still have that option. Bring my own paper. If I want a plastic bag, I should be able to pay for it. I don't think people, the businesses should be penalized for it. If somebody that's responsible wants to pay a nickel or dime or whatever and take that bag home. I know I'm not going to sell it to this audience or to the town, but I'm just telling you how I view this as an issue. One of the comments was, we're creatures of habit and convenience. Now, I've already established my habits. I'm already getting rid of my plastic bags. I'm using them for trash in my own household. Is it convenient to throw it out the window? I imagine it is for some people, but it's a tough one. The long rollout period, I think that's a blessing for us because it's going to give a diehard like me a chance to accumulate enough bags to get me through the next year. But I assure you that they're going to go into the Rhode Island Rhode Island Resource RIREC.
There you go.
They go to RIREC. And they're not going to find their way in the ocean from there unless somebody knows something that I don't.
They do.
But
they do. They travel in the groundwater, which is the reason this has gotta pick your head up, and raise your sights, and eliminate more bags.
Well, I can't. It's like a lot of statistics thrown out tonight. I can't confirm or deny them. You know, I imagine if you get a micro plastic piece, it may travel in the groundwater, but I think there's precautions at RIREC to prohibit that. The bottom line is, maybe I'm a dinosaur on how I look at this. You know, I will support it, but I'm only supporting it because of the amount of people that came out tonight that show me that they really want to do this. I didn't hear that many people that said, I look at it as similar as pay as you throw, which is a recycling thing. I balked at doing that when I was on the recycling committee. Eventually, as a liaison to that group, the numbers that wanted pay as you throw outnumber the people like myself. And I went and supported it, and that's what we're going to do in this town. It's not going to be easy for everybody. This whole, commitment to banning plastic bags won't be easy to everybody, but if the majority is saying it's something we should do, then I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to say I'm an honest citizen of Portsmouth, and the pictures that I took on Middle Road in Headley, those are the best.
Thank you, Mrs. Reaper.
The good news is you're honest and you're going to take them back with you too, right?
You can give them to me.
Ms. Bader?
Thank you. Thank everybody for speaking tonight. You're not going to change my behavior. I've been using reusable bags for years and years and years, before they were even popular, and I have actually the first Clements bag that they ever issued, and it's canvas. It's great, held up well, I wash it. People say, don't you want that in plastic? It's meat. I'm like, no, I'll just take it home and wash it. And I'm going to vote for this, again, as Mr. Gleason said, because there are so many of you that really want it, but I just need to say a few things. First of all, I think this is likely not going to give you the results that you seek, and that's going to be unintended consequences. As we heard tonight, they will still sell plastic bags, and they are going to be the thicker kind, and they're going to be, I just already know people that are buying them. And we're going to have now plastic bags, and as the solid waste recycle coordinator said, this isn't creating more bags, but it is, because now people are buying bags, putting them in another bag. I agree with Mr. Kessin. It just needs, there are too many exemptions. It's crazy that Mr. Gleason held up all the bags. But by the way, I don't have a bag of bags in my closet because I don't get them. And I actually do have some, but that's because other people gave them to me. I wish the kids had stayed, because what I would really have said to the young people is, you really need to find a substitute for plastic. Plastic has invaded our world. And I don't know if any of you are willing to really give up your plastic. You want to start with plastic bags, and you want everybody to, do this. But how many of you are willing? I saw kids with goggles. What's going to happen to those goggles when they break? I walk the beach all the time. I made a list. It's very similar to the one that Clean Ocean Access, except I didn't find that many plastic bags. I found by far plastic bottles, Dunkin' Donut cups, plastic lids, straws, coffee cups. Those were the things. Are you willing to give those things up? How many of you go? Yeah, well, yes. And, the plastic toys that kids have, I don't know if people realize the plastic in this world. It's crazy. So I would ask our young people to come up with a solution for the plastic problem, that we really need to do away with plastic, but what's the substitute? What is the substitute? Now, the other thing is...
It was rhetorical.
The other thing is, again, those unintended consequences. I'm looking in Newport, and now oh my God, job lot, they're giving away tons of paper bags. And I remember when paper bags were banned because, oh my God, we're cutting down the trees, So now there's tons of paper bags. What else? Paper mills, talk about energy, paper mills. That's an incredible amount of energy that, and there's no reuse for paper bags. These bags were being reused, so I don't like calling them single-use bags. Again, the exemptions are way too broad, way too broad. All that energy that it takes to produce these bags, what do you think it takes to produce the garbage bags? How many of you put your garbage in garbage bags and buy garbage bags? Are you willing to give that up? Somebody said pass an ordinance and make it strong. This ordinance is not strong. There's so many exemptions. Anyway, I just wish there was a substitute for plastic. I'm going to vote for this ordinance. I know you guys want it.
Is that all, Ms. Bader?
Yeah, I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
I was waiting. There was an so. Ms. Suzie Fusa.
I move that we approve this draft ordinance.
Second.
Can you add with the changes that we approved this evening?
With the changes that we approved.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Kessin. Motion passes 6-1. The ban will go in place on 9/1/2018. And for the record, Mr. Gavin, can you just give that to the clerk for consent agenda on the next meeting, just so everybody can read it through? Okay? Do I have a motion for a quick 5-minute recess?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Be back at 9:05. Just make sure you have good aim. The meeting back to order, and we're going to start where we left off, which is old business number 1, which is the monthly financial report. Mr. Menke.
Good evening, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. Quick summary, the revenues and expenditures are pretty much on track. The one thing I noted in the memo attached is that the departments that are above glide slope right now as far as expenditures go, meaning they spent more than they should have through January. As per the new policy, we will be addressing that at the next department head meeting we have with them and get them on track. So if pending any other questions, that's all I have right now.
And that's tomorrow morning?
09:30, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Kessler?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Mackey, looking at this financial report, you said, your own department, which is finance and HR, can you tell me currently what those expenses are? Are they OPEB costs or anything?
No, they're not OPEB. They're, we prepay our insurance costs. But I can give you a breakdown on that.
Solid numbers, that's fine.
Yeah. I can give you a breakdown numbers.
Civic support is the same thing at 81? Mm-hmm. My next question is, we had a meeting, myself, Mr. Rayner, and we talked about breaking the contingency into $50,000 plus the sticker revenue, and we're going to report out on the Prudence Island expense because we only had about $75,000. Mm-hmm. I currently have that at $23,000 in 1 month. Are you concerned that that's going to stay on that line?
I'm not concerned, but again, I can look into it and I can report back to you on that and give you an update, or I can give the entire council an update at the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Are you specifically asking the sticker sales for Prudence Island?
Well, I don't know what the total revenue is. I know we authorized 50 out of the contingency.
The remaining 50 in the contingency fund, yes, that was authorized.
Then I don't know what stickers on Prudence is for remaining revenue. I have it at I have the expenses already at $22,845.60.
Okay. All right.
And what I'm surprised to see is there's 3 roll-offs. And I know we only planned on 1 roll-off a month, I think, is when we did some rough numbers to try to get to 70 by the end of the year.
It might have been the metal recyclables that we took off. That's not in there.
I can't tell. All I have is a $625 cost for a 40 and 2 42s.
Well, what was the C&D that we just started?
Don't know what it is.
Okay.
But if it's going to go over that cost we've allocated, then it'd be nice to know. Thank you.
Any other questions on Mr. Mackey's report? I have a motion to receive and place on file.
So moved.
Okay.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Old business number 2, discussion and action, request progress report on short-term rental properties. Ms. Panaggio. There she is. Good evening.
Hello. My name's Susan Panaggio, 324 Riverside Street. I was here last April to bring concerns about the short-term rental / college rentals in my neighborhood. So I was here to, first of all, I want to mention, this morning in the Newport Daily News, when I was looking at the Portsmouth Town Council, it referred to what we were asking for as a ban. We haven't used that word ban. We're looking for ordinances and restrictions. So I just want to make that clear. We're asking for regulations. So I wanted to find out where we're at. What's happening? Do we have...
Mr. Rayner.
Good evening. Yes, we've been studying this issue since that meeting. Just run you very quickly through it. We have met with the police department, planning and zoning officials, director of business development, town solicitor, and we've conducted a review of area ordinances. Bottom line up front, we do not believe that a new ordinance banning or restricting short-term rentals should be considered for adoption at this time. We'd like to note that in 2005, the Town Council held a hearing on a proposed ordinance that would have prohibited any short-term, i.e. less than 1 month, rentals of a dwelling unit in a residential zoning district, and there was a vehement outcry against that, and the council did vote no to enact that ordinance. We'd also like to note that there are potential legal considerations as well. In 2015, the Rhode Island General Assembly enacted a statute which provides for, in part, for any residential unit offered for tourist or transient use on a hosting platform that collects and remits applicable sales and hotel taxes, cities, towns, and municipalities shall not prohibit the owner of such residential unit from offering the unit for tourist or transient use through such hosting platform, or prohibit such hosting platform from providing a person or entity the means to rent, pay, or for otherwise reserve a residential unit for tourist or transient use. Since the meeting where we were directed to look at this, there have actually been relatively few complaints overall about short-term rentals, and we do not feel that there is a widespread problem in Portsmouth at this time that needs to be addressed by acting a new ordinance. We currently have zoning and land use ordinances and regulations in effect, and our police department responds promptly to any complaints received, and if warranted, will charge an offending party who violates a criminal statute, i.e. disorderly conduct, or who violates our noise ordinance or other town ordinances. The department will, of course, continue to fulfill its responsibilities in this regard. Our zoning officer also may issue notice of violations for any provisions or any violations of provisions of our zoning ordinance. In appropriate circumstances, we will send a letter to a property owner that is identified to us as an Airbnb or other hosting platform renter, providing specific notification of the occupancy limits that we have and the restrictions that apply under the Portsmouth zoning ordinance and the Rhode Island Housing Maintenance and Occupancy Code. So in sum, we recommend that the Town Council not pursue the adoption of a new ordinance at this time to restrict or regulate short-term rentals. We recommend that the applicable town departments and officials continue to follow our current practice and procedures and enforce existing ordinances and laws as needed on a case-by-case basis. We did look at other area ordinances, specifically Newport and Middletown. We don't have the staff to enact the kind of regulation that Newport has, i.e. hiring another person to look at this on an almost full-time basis. So that led us to the Middletown ordinance. The Middletown ordinance is essentially an encapsulation of what we already have on our books, with the exception of a registration fee. And they charge a $10 registration fee to register your short-term rental. They're looking to change it to $100.
They have.
So $100 to register your rental unit. Last count, there were approximately 25 hosted platforms in Portsmouth. So even if we were to enact something like Middletown, we're looking at $2,500 revenue. But to enforce this and inspect those, we would expend much more in that. So to fix a problem that right now has not manifested itself as a widespread problem in Portsmouth, I think our recommendation stands.
Okay, clearly you don't live next door to one of these. On my house, on my street, there's at least 5 on my circle, and they're not listed on Airbnb as far as I know, so you wouldn't know about them, but I do because I live with this. I've got neighbors here that can tell you it's pure chaos, and when the Roger Williams kids come in, Middletown has begun to charge $100. Middletown also limits how many people per bedroom. There's a studio apartment next to me that there's been 6 to 8 people crammed in there. In Middletown, they require a set number of parking spots based on the number of people. Property manager has to be located within 10 miles to respond. The person next door to me, and who also has another rental on my street, he's not only out of town, he's out of state. Landlords must collect tenants' names, home addresses, model, years, color of the car, and vehicle registrations and have them posted. In Newport, non-owner occupied rentals of 9 months or less have to be registered, signed, leased, listing all the tenants' names, posted with the city ordinances. That's another thing. Thank you for the one-way sign, but guess what? They're still blasting around the street the wrong way, because that's the other thing that's happening. And what I see with articles from Boston to Providence, where people are talking about this, people are concerned with the endangering neighborhood culture, degradation of community, noisy parties, mistrust of people, lose the sense of being in your neighborhood. I'll read you, read a quote, excuse me. Got my notes here. Thank you. While I'm looking for that, I will say, last time I was here, I was also told, if there's trouble, just call the police. Well, I have in my phone, I see that one night in September, I started calling the police at 10 minutes to 2 in the morning, and I called them till 10 minutes after 6 that same morning. That's not how I want to spend my time. I really don't want, that sounds reactive to me. I need proactive. I'm a retired kindergarten teacher. In my classroom, we had a list of rules. These are the rules. This is what happens if you don't follow the rules. And everything ran well. If I ran around putting fires out all day, being reactive, just calling the police every time they started up a fire pit at 2 a.m. in the morning, or popping beers under my window at 9:30 on a Sunday morning, that's just putting out fires. Can we, we need to... Here's a quote from Newport zoning officer Guy Weston. "You can lose the sense of being in a neighborhood if homes are being used that way." Here's another quote. "I think this is a good ordinance because it's a good start. It's the people we have to worry about across the town who've been subject to intolerable conditions. They are residents who live here and have reasonable expectations for quality of life." That's Middletown Town Council President Robert Sylvia. I'll read you another quote. Here's me, I'm just a retired senior citizen living alone in my home in Island Park that I've owned for 30 years. If that's not of concern, my quality of life, maybe this is a concern. One of the things giving this context, this is from Newport this week, one of the things giving this context is the 2003 Station nightclub fire, which prompted Rhode Island to adopt one of the most aggressive sprinkler laws in the nation. About half of the bed and breakfast in Newport closed because they couldn't make the kind of investment needed to upgrade. Today we have two different lodging standards: hotels and inns that are licensed and inspected, and Airbnb properties that are not. More work has to be done to level the playing field. You cannot have two sets of rules. Municipalities have to identify the properties and figure out how to approach this. I will tell you, there's a house on my street. They put about 8 people in there, turn and walk away. Newport hired a company to manage this for just under $30,000 a year. What they're starting to bring up is the fact that these places don't have up-to-date sprinkler systems. I think if we've learned anything in the last month, it's that bad things can happen, and they can happen in Portsmouth. Got to get a grip on this. If somebody wants to rent, the other thing in Newport and Middletown, if you're going to be renting, they have ordinances and things about, now you're renting a B&B or a guest house, and you need to be on the premises, which would eliminate fire pits at 2 a.m. that go till 6 a.m. right under your window. The houses are close together in Island Park. Some of my neighbors from Riverside Street are here, and some other people that have concerns, so I'm going to let them, if they'd like to speak. Scott?
Ms. Panaggio, before you disappear.
I'm not going anywhere,
Okay.
yes.
What was the specific date in September, so we can have the town administrator look at
I
it?
believe it's September 16.
Thank you. That was the morning? It was either 16th or 15th, so was the night of the 15th going to the 16th?
10 minutes to 2, September 16 till
Thank you.
after 6 that same morning.
Okay. Do you have that, Mr. Rayner? So you can check with Chief Lee, please. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Frank Pizarro, 259 Riverside Street, Portsmouth. Thanks for letting us have an opportunity to talk. First of all, I didn't plan on getting up to speak, but I feel like with Ms. Panaggio coming up and speaking her piece, I want you all to understand that this isn't just an older generation saying the kids are being too loud. I'm a young guy. My wife and I are both young. We bought a house in Island Park 3 years ago. We bought it for a nice, quiet community, and then my mother-in-law found out how nice and quiet it was, and she bought a house 6 houses down from us. We live there because we want to be on the water and we want to experience fun. Miss Pedro, you mentioned the plastic bottles in the water, right? Plastic cups. Guess what happens in our community? Drunk college kids sitting on the water, throwing plastic bottles and plastic cups that I have to clean up the next day. Why do I have to clean them up? Because they don't care. It's not their responsibility. The house next door to me is owned by the father of one of the children who live there with his friends. Right now, it's on VRBO for 10 people to rent it in the summertime, 4 bedrooms. It's a 3-bedroom septic, 3 bedrooms. He has an illegal bedroom in the basement and an illegal bathroom in the basement. How is that allowed, even by the ordinance that's already in place?
You're preaching to the choir. I live right down the street from you.
Okay, so you know exactly who I'm
I
talking
know
about.
exactly.
I work
what
in
you're talking
Newport. I
about.
run a theater in Newport till late at night. I come home. All I want to do is drive into my driveway and go in my house. I can't even get into my driveway because they have however many people living there, and there's cars up and down my street. Ms. Panaggio's right. People drive the wrong direction on our street. I'm one of them. Why? Because I can't go the other way because I drive a Silverado. I literally can't turn out of my driveway to go, and I don't have the time. I got to go to work. I have to do other things. I can't go knock on doors and say, hey, move your cars. I have called the police multiple times. They show up. They kind of meander around. They'll knock on the door. They'll say, we'll ask them to move a car or something. Very rarely does any action get taken, or a statement get taken or anything like that. My wife and I were home one day this past summer, and we heard a lot of noise outside. Long story short, one of these Mensa candidates put a fish hook through his leg. He was in so much pain, he was crying, laying on the dock crying. Now, they were drinking all day, et cetera, et cetera. His buddies are telling him, you don't need to go to the hospital, you're fine, I'll take it out with this pair of pliers, you're fine. This kid is crying, and then he's saying, I'm getting dizzy. We're hearing all this in our living room. Finally, my wife goes outside and goes, I will take you to the hospital. Now they freak out. Because now, oh no, we'll take care of him. Because if the police get involved, they're college kids, I'm sure some of them are underage. What happened? It's going to be, all of a sudden, it's going to be a problem for them. They did, as far as we know, took him to the hospital. Stuff like that, we shouldn't have to deal with that in our neighborhood. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is not something that can just be dismissed away by saying, oh, it's nothing we can do. Sir, you said 25 houses. I don't know where you got that number from. You go on VRBO right now, right this minute, 601 vacation houses in Portsmouth. That's $60,000, according to your numbers there, with a $100 registration fee. I'll do that job for $60,000 a year. Hire me. I run a theater. We don't do very well. I will do that job.
You're right.
So I understand the idea of, we don't need to take care of it. It's not our problem, whatever. There's ordinances already in place. But something's got to be done. Because like Ms. Panaggio said, something bad's going to happen with these kids. We watched them come across on a canoe, wasted from partying on the other side of the water, all falling out of the boat, pushing each other. I mean, Island Tap is right across the way. They're going, they're drinking, and then they're taking boats back, trying to swim back, whatever it might be. Something is going to happen. There are things we can do to prevent that. I'm with her. Let's be proactive. Reactive is not going to look too good on all of our shoulders later on down the road. Thank you.
Well, and it's not just that. It's that you have a right to live in your home and in a residential area, and I understand that. And I don't think that you want to stop it all, like you said, because I understand that Rhode Island general law has been used to say that we can't do anything about this, but that's not exactly the case, because I don't think these people want to stop the rentals. They just want some guidelines if you're going to have them. And there's nothing in the Rhode Island general law that says that we can't enforce our zoning and have some guidelines. And I totally agree with that, because I think what you're asking for is to stop the abuse.
Absolutely, and just for the record, I'm also a real estate agent. I don't want to stop rentals. That hurts my business.
Right.
My mother-in-law buys investment properties. She's a responsible homeowner, she does monthly rentals. It's the weekly rentals that are causing the problems, because weekly rentals make a lot of money in the summertime and lead to children renting, college kids renting in the off-season. So I'm not saying we can't have rentals. Obviously, that's silly. But yes, being responsible about it is worse.
I understand that, and I understand some of the private citizens have done some research on their own, and they already have a list of properties that they found. And I can totally understand when a property has, say, one bedroom, as Ms. Panaggio pointed out, but yet they're renting to 8 people. I think at the very least, you can go on Vision Appraisal and see what, like this one says, Vision Appraisal says 3 bedrooms, but yet it's being advertised for 10 bedrooms. So I think that's a reasonable request for us to look into these.
Ms. Panaggio asked me to look into this, and I had actually, back in November, December, done some work earlier, and I'd like to update that. And my name is, for starters, James Moore, and I live at 18 East Terrace in Portsmouth. Talking about the 25 houses, I thought it might be helpful to have a kind of a visual. This is Airbnb's map of Portsmouth. I went on Airbnb this morning and looked up what they think they have.
If you can, the camera's that way, and if you want to pass that around to the council.
Airbnb's map of Portsmouth. I thought it might be-
And if you can speak into the
go back
mic.
to the microphone, everybody can hear you.
And it's not for us.
We can hear you, but
It's not for us, it's for the camera,
Only
because
18 months in town.
that's okay.
so-
No, it's
Right.
not. It's just
when people watch on camera, that's what they hear.
This is Airbnb's view of Portsmouth. This is not VRBO, Home Away, Home to Go, Craigslist, all the other guys that also have hosting sites. And if you could, maybe the council could look at that. I'd like to make a brief statement in support of that. The town administrator mentioned that in 2005, there was a question about short-term rentals. 2005 is dinosaur age in the internet. The internet hardly existed. Airbnb didn't exist as a company in 2005. Today, I think there are at least 73 homes available on Airbnb. There are 20 or 30 other homes available on the other platforms. And none of that counts, as Ms. Panaggio said, the 5 homes that are immediately adjacent to her on Riverside Street, which aren't on any of these sites. Because what happens, I think, is that when you go on one of these sites, they force you to pay the tax to the government of the state. But after you're successful for a while, you rent your house on Facebook. Who needs Airbnb if you have a good Facebook account? Once you're on Facebook, I would question whether those Facebook people are paying with enthusiasm their state taxes. Airbnb charges you 20%. It's 33 cents on the dollar goes out the door to the state and Airbnb if you use their site. So my guess is there are way over 100 houses in this town that are offered in one way or another. Secondly, I like to use the word houses because there's a confusion in this town and in discussion about B&Bs. B&Bs are places where the owner or the person who is representing the owner is on the site all the time. You don't have people acting out very often when the owner happens to be living in the house. Secondly, almost if you go to Vision Appraisal and look at the town's data, and I agree, by the way, with the town administrator, it's not easy to do this, to connect the Vision Appraisal data directly to the town, but I have a memorandum which tries to address that. And I've got about 30 identified houses, and of those 30 identified houses, 2/3 of them are owned by people who don't live on this island. A lot of the other houses may be owned by somebody in Middletown or maybe owned by somebody in Newport, but they're businesses. These are commercial businesses. If you go to Airbnb today, they'll teach you how to use the cash flow data from their website to get a mortgage, to buy a house, to convert it into a commercial business. These are not private homes which are being somehow offering out a room trying to make the mortgage payment in this town or pay their taxes. These are places where people buy the house, start them up a little bit, and put them out for $300 or $400 a night. So in Common Fence Point, I found 11 homes, Island Park, 10 homes, between Boyd's Lane and Child Street, 5 homes, Mount Hope Bridge, 5 homes, Melville, 3 homes, Dexter Lane to Sherwood, 11 homes, Sherwood Drive to Brahmins Lane, 7 homes, Mitchell's Lane, the little part of it we have, 3 homes, Wapping Road, 5 homes, Old Mill and Indian Avenue, 7 homes. Now, I did this in about 2 or 3 days. I agree with that gentleman. This is not that hard to find this information. So what we have is, in this town, and as Newport discovered, by the way, and I used to live in Newport for 18 years before moving to Portsmouth 18 months ago for the peace and quiet and gentility of this town versus living, if you will, on the chaos and enthusiasm of what happens in Newport. They thought they had a really good handle on it. They hired the company to take a look at it. They found 243 places not registered in Newport. 243 in addition to all the B&Bs. In Newport, there's an interesting commercial point, and that is these people, therefore, are not abiding by parking, they're not abiding by a fire code, they're not abiding by any of the other rules. They have an enormous competitive advantage over the B&Bs. So if Portsmouth has any interest in ever creating a genuine B&B community or small boutique hotel community, and you allow this plague of commercial businesses in single-family residential areas to continue to grow, you are never going to have that kind of business development because these people don't have to play by any of those rules or run any of those expenses. So there is no right, per se, to operate a commercial business. And I agree completely with Councilman Pedro that it is true that there is 42-63.1-14 talking about hosting platforms. Looks to me like a lobbyist wrote the word hosting platforms versus some other kind of technique. But putting that aside for a minute, nowhere in that law does it say the town may not regulate these properties as to compliance with town regulations weigh commercial properties, health and safety issues. These properties are almost every one of them commercial businesses, not single-family homes or B&Bs. The town could do the following. It can regulate the number of people allowed to occupy a house based on the size of the house or the number of bedrooms. That's in the town assessor's field cards. The data to find out whether those towns are there is in the public internet. It's easily available. Or you could ask the people who happen to live on Riverside or the people who live in Common Fence Point, because I think they know who these people are. They can turn them in. The data is the town doesn't have to hire someone to do it. And if they did hire someone to do it at $100 a shot, I agree you could probably make $100,000 a year just from $100 per registration fee. I'm not sure that's an appropriate fee, by the way, given the kind of profitability in this business. It's just a haircut, a mere bagatelle if you're running one of these commercial businesses, but it would be something. Secondly, compliance with parking regulations to ensure that the number of renters bears a relationship to the number of officially available bedrooms and parking spaces are limited to the house's lot and its street frontage. Again, Ms. Panaggio and I went to visit her home. The gentleman next door who's renting to 6 or 8 people has a 645 square foot house. 1 bedroom, 6 people, 3 or 4 cars. He has almost the space to park 1 in front. Where do those other cars go? Up and down the street. There are 6 or 7 houses that are renting to 10 or more people. That's like 60 years. That's 5 or 6 cars per house, 36 extra cars. So there ought to be, that is something that the town could also address. Compliance with fire code for transitory rentals. These folks are in a commercial business of renting to transients for short periods of times. I think it's an open question whether that should include sprinkler systems, but certainly where you have houses that have 8, 9, 10, in 2 cases on Indian Avenue, 20 people, I think that's a sprinkler system. One house on Indian Avenue advertises that it's available for 20 people, and there's a photograph of the great hall of the house, which is available for meetings of 40 people. All right? This is in one of the premier high-end residential neighborhoods of our town. And I think that's the interesting contrast here. We have Common Fence Point and Island Park overrun, and we have houses on Indian Avenue that are $5 million homes also being converted to hotels. What's the likelihood to the impact to the real estate value of those homes on Indian Avenue when someone buys one and then discovers that, guess what? Their neighbor can turn that into a hotel, and the town council and the administrator don't think that's an issue, even though they're putting up 20 people. I talked to some folks on Indian Avenue, and they mentioned, who mentioned that at one of these houses, all summer long, they were running buses to this house, small hotel, because they had so many people, they needed to conveniently get them to the folk festival, right, and to the jazz festival in Newport. And this was a terrific place to stay. Finally, as was also mentioned by the gentleman, this is an egregious violations of septic regulations. These houses are often 2 or 3 bedroom houses, and the town assessor's list, they typically say they're renting for 6 to 8 or 10 people. And they do that. They're, by the way, available on Airbnb year-round. The big impact is the summertime, and some people convert to Roger Williams students in the winter, but they're available year-round, which tells you nobody's living there. It's a business. Compliance with garbage collection so as to not overwhelm the neighborhoods. And compliance with noise ordinances to limit the number of renters allowed in a house. So I'm back to, if you were to limit the renters to, let's say, 2 people per bedroom, just for example, as a starter, and a maximum number of people that might be allowed in any house, which might be 6 or 8, or it's a subject for discussion, you would then get at all of these events that you say are going to be handled on an exceptional basis. If you have fewer numbers of renters and it relates to the occupancy capacity of the house and the neighborhood, the probability you're then going to have septic issues, garbage questions, and noise issues goes down in a fairly dramatic way, I think. I think $100 is probably cheap. If I were running one of these businesses, and I'm renting them out, by the way, for $300 to $2,000, the one on Indian Avenue is $2,500 a night. The ones that are listed in the neighborhoods in Common Fence Point and Island Park are $200 a night to $500 a night. A miserable $100 to get a license to run this business? Are you kidding? This is a joke. I'd pay that in a heartbeat. I'd probably pay $500 a night. That's one night's rental for 4 houses that I identified on Riverside Street, right? One night's rental, $500. So I'm not sure what the right number should be, but it's certainly at least $100 and could easily be more. I suggest that it's not a complicated issue. It is a danger to our town. It's exploding. If Kerry Crosby was right last year that there were 25 houses, there are more than 100 now. When I went on, when I went on Vision Appraisal, I think more than half of these houses were purchased since 2014. A lot, it's happening very fast. People saw the loophole, they saw the truck you can drive through it, they saw the money you can make at it. They don't live in the town, and they certainly don't live in the neighborhood. And this is an economic home run for investors. It is not, however, a home run for people who live in this town and vote in this town, and like Ms. Panaggio, had devoted her life here as a school teacher and now a retired lady. And she's certainly not in a position to hire the lawyers. You know, the other way to do it is have the individuals hire lawyers and beat up on their neighbors. Mrs. Panaggio can't do that. The town council needs to step up and address this issue in a comprehensive way that defends the citizenry of this town, rather than handing them over to a group of private investors. Thank you. Sorry, my memos are available.
If you have them electronically, could you, Jim, if you could send those electronically to the clerk?
Sure.
It's very simply jwest@portsmouthri.com.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
And she can forward them out to all of us. Be easier that way. And we'll save a couple trees. Mr. Fitzmaurice.
Thank you, Mr. President. Larry Fitzmaurice, 50 Kristen Court. It's an interesting issue, obviously highly technical. And I think, obviously, the situation in terms of the technologies are in fluid motion. However, I think there's a serious problem here. The numbers on that chart are uniform, basically, throughout the communities in our town. So I think that we're facing this everywhere. And I think that there needs to be some solution to this problem. Otherwise, we're going to stop defending the residential zoning nature of our communities. As we all know, Portsmouth is primarily a residential community. And that's the primary defense in terms of the value of our lives here, our quality of lives, is that particular zoning code. There are variations on residential, but it's almost all residential. So we're either going to have businesses scattered through our residences, or we're not. And I think that that's really the question we're facing. And it's certainly new, and it's certainly changing. But if we have, as we appear to have, virtual hotels running in some parts of the town's residential communities, then that's something that needs to be changed. And we need to deal with it effectively. It may be that the state law prohibits us from doing anything. And I would, number one, question why it is the Assembly felt it necessary to come down and get involved in our zoning code, even though they have the authority to do so. I think that's our job here. And if we feel that there's a limitation in state law on our effective use and implementation of our own existing zoning code, then we need to go talk to the people who represent us and ask them to change it. But in any case, my understanding is that zoning code says that any residence is limited to 4 unrelated people living there. And clearly, many of these community, these houses are in excess of that. The definition of how we're going to do that, I think, is open to discussion and research. But but we do need to enforce our zoning code. If we're not going to enforce it, then we need to have a discussion about why, in this council and with the people, why we're not going to enforce our zoning code. But I think we have an obligation to do so once we pass these things. I would like to emphasize that I'm not talking about people's, individuals that reside in their homes and see fit to rent some of their rooms out. I don't think that that's the issue here at all. As previously said, with the owner present, most of these issues go away. And I don't think that we should be fooling around with anybody that feels a need, especially in what is obviously a pretty high tax area, trying to do something about mitigating the cost of living here. But I think that many of these communities that have been quoted, many of these facilities have been quoted here are not privately operated. If the owner lives somewhere else, wherever it might be, then it's a business by definition, I would think. And we need to relook at this thing, and I would like to have the council make some motion to the effect that we have a study group put together to deal with this. Thank you.
Good evening. I haven't had the time to type up my scribbles, so if I get muddled, you'll forgive me. It is almost 10 o'clock.
No worries.
My name is John McCulloch, 355 Indian Avenue. I have been a full-time resident of Portsmouth for 18 years. We moved here from elsewhere in New England and built a house. I'm here broadly to support the speakers that have come before me. I think they have done a phenomenal job working on what Mr. Crosby started to come up with a good understanding of the problem. It is not correct to say that there isn't a problem in this town, and I think that you're starting to maybe see that picture more clearly. Web-enabled businesses are transforming our country, the world. Okay, it's very exciting. I don't think any one of us wants to see that kind of energy and investment and capital origination go away. It's what is making our world work. Some cases it's in clear with the law. Other places it's in violation of existing law. I think the latter exists in Portsmouth in significant degree. I've seen a lot of things, videos of a meeting with Panagio from last April and others that showed, everything about the problem except the real issue, which was Article 5 of the use restrictions say no across the board in residential areas for more than 4 rentals. And I couldn't figure out why it wasn't being enforced. And I think, I'm not trying to point fingers or anything like that, but there have been issues that have come up over the years, of 18 years here, full-time. I don't disappear in the winter. I've asked questions of various town officials about why certain things seem to be not, being enforced. And the answer has been, and we heard it again tonight, that, well, we don't think there's a problem. Nobody's complained. Well, I've tried to have, in some cases, my neighbors complain. I know one person who doesn't have a cell phone, doesn't have a landline. His cell phone is unlisted. He is scared stiff of coming up and standing at a microphone and putting his life on display because he's got a problem. The fact that if you're measuring whether you should enforce a law by the existence or not of complaints, I think you're kind of missing the point, okay? Pardon me, this is where I have to start to look at my notes. So the VRBO industry, Airbnb, is rapidly growing. I think I've seen some of these sites, they do a phenomenal job. They're good at hospitality. I don't think anybody is there to dispute that, okay? And the best ones are very well run, and they're making a lot of money. Hey, that's the capitalist system. But it bothers me as a matter of principle that they're doing it in gross violation of the law, as it currently exists, not as it might be amended through regulation. And so I don't think we're here to change this amazing disruptive force of the internet. We're here to understand that the genie is out of the bottle because we haven't been enforcing the rules. And it's not going to go back in the bottle. But we have a problem because of that. And I can cite you, the earlier person with the data, he's got lots of data. And it shows over and over again that there are patterns. Huge discrepancies between what shows on the field card in terms of capacity and amenities and bedrooms and what's being advertised on websites. You ask about it, well, we can't get in that house because the owner won't let us. Well, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. I know there are a lot of them in the room. Probable cause is something that makes sense to me. If you can go to a website and see that you can double click on a room for the night in a place that's advertising 6 bedrooms and 16 people, that has sometimes 28 cars, this is the 4th of July, out front and arrayed across the front places of all of its neighbors, and then look on the field card and find that it has 4 bedrooms. In fact, it has 6 bedrooms. And that's one example, and it's not necessarily in my neighborhood. There are plenty of others just like that. There's a huge discrepancy there, and I'm sure it's very difficult for Mr. Helfand to stay on top of it. It's a real issue, okay? And as a law-abiding citizen of Portsmouth, I'm bothered by it. So there's a kind of a general reluctance to enforce these rules that already exist. The memo that was written on the 21st of February that was in the docket tonight, in effect, confirms the policy. It confirms not doing the enforcing as a policy of the town. I was stunned to find about this law, a state law, overrunning a local law. And I agree with the people that spoke before me. I don't see any basis for an opinion that suggests that precludes the town from enforcing its own regulations. But that's what's happening. In fact, That state law, for some reason, doesn't seem to have bothered Newport and Middletown. I think they're further along than might have been discussed here. They are actively dealing with it because, and frankly, in Newport, the problem is more intense, it's more visible, it's kind of, Island Park on steroids, okay? I didn't mean to insult Island Park. This is a town-wide problem. It's not just Island Park and Common Fence Point. It's all over the town. It's affecting people of means, it's affecting people of fewer means. It's all over the town. And it's going to continue to metastasize if we don't develop common sense and rational regulations for it. Like almost every other town I've ever been associated with, like Hilton Head, South Carolina, has a very, very strict parking ban. That's how they can deal with it in their densely packed sea pines plantation. Lake Forest, Illinois. I was on the phone today with a friend who I was just told her husband has become the president of the Lake Forest Town Council. There's a huge fistfight going over there because of the fact that the same disruptive technology is having the same effect. But they're acting on it, and they're aggressively acting on it. Not to shut the businesses down necessarily, not to go after the people who are trying to make ends meet and are renting out their bedrooms, to someone. That's the traditional B&B business, who are resident in place and are not going to allow the behavior. But it's to stop the ones where the person lives in Massachusetts and can afford to spend $2.5 million for a waterfront house and put enormous amounts of extra space in it and run buses to it for profit. No taxes being paid, no fire regulations being met. I guarantee you that if you really were honest, 30,000 feet, and look at the septic capacity of these places that have been turned into hotels, you'd find they're egregiously in violation of ISDS rules. And so I guess I just make the final observation. It has to be done town-wide. It has to be a law that protects everybody. Okay? And I think that I think we have to start enforcing the laws. I just ask a question. My wife and I moved here because I spent a lot of time on the water. My skin doctor will attest to that. I love it here. You'd have to blow us out of Rhode Island with all the issues that it has as a government. High taxes and all the other stuff, not to mention what's happening after the tax law changes. We love it here. I've been involved in tons of volunteer programs. I know people here who have been with me at the Land Trust. We're good citizens. When we built our house, and it's a nice house, we put a substantial amount of our capital into coming and living in Portsmouth. And I'm very proud of that. We also meticulously obeyed the law when we built the house. We had a couple of different reasons to get a variance, or two, I can't remember all of them. We came with a lawyer, explained the issue, and got proper approval. Okay? And so it sticks in my craw that doesn't seem to be an issue for people who are turning these houses into wealthy people who are turning these houses into commercial operations in a residential zone. And I wonder in the future, and people say, well, what's the damage to Portsmouth? Well, no harm, no foul. Well, what's going to happen in the future when people like me and others who can come and contribute to the community get wind of the fact that this is a town that really kind of says, we don't see a problem here. You got a big problem. And I didn't articulate it as well as I might have. I don't have all the detail, the data, but it's something I feel in my gut. And I don't like it because I love Portsmouth. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Gavin.
If I could just leave you with a little story of a day in my life in Island Park. It was mid-November 2014. The studio next to me, I don't know, maybe there was 6 Roger Williams kids in there. I don't know. I watched them walk across the street with a glass aquarium. I live right across from the deeded private access. That's a whole nother story. They threw the aquarium in the cove, glass aquarium. I went in the cove November. I got the aquarium out. cut myself. I drove the aquarium, broken aquarium, to the Portsmouth Police Station, brought it inside, and told them what happened and who did it. We didn't see it. I saw it. We didn't see it. Nothing happened. DEM was interested. They sent Mr. Peter Wood, environmental police officer, who came to my house to take the broken aquarium away. So I imagine DEM might have a report about it, but it's no way to live. Thank you.
So, Mr. Gavin, we have a four-person limit, a four unrelated person limit, excuse me, per household. Is that correct?
Well,
how's the housing?
It's a little more complicated than that. Our occupancy code says that in a dwelling, which is a house, you can have a family. Does not define what the size of the family is. It's not a family you can rent to four unrelated people. It doesn't determine how many guests you can have. So when you go to these places, they've got four people on the lease, or they got four people on the contract. It doesn't determine how many guests they have. I can only go by the data that I've received. We've received 3 complaints since our last meeting on this, and we follow them up vigorously.
How many? I'm aware of the one 3-bedroom that turned into a 10-bedroom all of a sudden. So even on that lease, Kevin, I'm going to ask you this. There can only be 4 people, even though there's, quote, 10 bedrooms, even though it's a 3-bedroom, unrelated.
If the zoning enforcement people find something like that, where someone's saying, sleeps 20 for a 3-bedroom house, I think we could use that and we could start with a warning, or we can send a notice of violation. And I think that's what the administrator was saying, is that we can enforce the ordinances that are on the books. And that's all I think he was recommending at this time. You can follow it and monitor the situation, and when there's problems identified in a particular house, that we take it on a case-by-case basis.
For one, I don't have an issue of charging people $100 to rent a house.
Yes, and that would obviously be the prerogative if we want to register businesses, which we support. We're going to come to you at a future meeting to register all businesses. But just a correction, that $100 fee was brought forward to the Middletown Town Council, and they failed to pass that, so it is $10 in Middletown.
That's fine. The goal is not the fee. The goal is to register these folks who are renting them, so therefore they, at the end of the year, send us a report and say, this is who I rented to, and this is the lodging tax that I owe you. I know that registered hotel owners and B&B owners in Newport, who do pay on a regular basis, even who rent quote-unquote short-term rentals nightly, want these other people to do it because they're paying them and the others are not. So it's an unfair playing field for them.
That's correct. That's what we totally support, registering these businesses.
I don't think that's the problem. It's not the money. I don't think these people care about the money. They just want to stop the abuses. They want their neighborhood, they want their, I wrote down the 4 things that were recommended, and they're pretty simple. At least go by the number of bedrooms for these houses.
But that's not what's in the zoning ordinance.
I know, but that's what we could, these are things we could do.
Sure.
And it has nothing to do with this Rhode Island general law, which says we shall not prohibit, which we're not going to prohibit, we're just going to have some regulations. And, parking regulations. We could limit it to whatever, I don't know. We need it, I think this needs to be, I like Mr. Fitzmaurice's recommendation to have a study group and come up with some proposed regulations, although there are 4 good proposed regulations right here. Compliance with the fire code. If it's more than 20 people, maybe it requires a sprinkler system.
But I think the first...
Septic regulations, that's easy. Because when we build these systems, we design them by the number of bedrooms. And, if someone's having a party, like the first thing I think of is like, we used to have a 4th of July party at my parents' house every single year for years and years and years, and we had lots and lots of people, but none of them spent the night. They all went home. And this is not that. These people are spending the night.
But I think the first step is, has been said, we need to register these things, because if we don't know they're even there, we can't monitor their activities.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I know it's getting very late, and we have people here to discuss other complicated issues, and I feel like what we need to do is make a motion to have all the issues that were raised, which is look at the data that Mr. Moore has discovered that I don't think has been brought to our attention until he dug it up. Look at the options that other towns have taken to regulate and the pros and cons and how they would fit with our community. We also need to look at how we can better enforce our zoning code. We need to look at potentially putting together draft ordinances, approve the hearing, have a hearing on the ordinance. I mean, summer is going to come, and it would be very sad if we took no actions before summer comes. So I would make a motion that we have Mr. Rayner take actions to put together a study group to look at all those issues and try to, by what would be a reasonable time, by 2 meetings from now, to come up with a proposal to...
Well, he's not going to get a study group together and have a proposal in a month.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true, because we have a lot of people who have a lot of data on this, and it shouldn't take forever to, put this together and come up with draft regulations, especially since the other communities have been putting together their proposals. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect some kind of action in the next 4 weeks on this. At least a plan to go forward.
If the council wants to see, I mean, the ordinance we did 12 years ago had a registration process and so forth, and council wants to see a draft of some sort of ordinance that provides for registration of short-term rentals.
Well, and also to incorporate some of the new things that have been done in Middletown as well. So I know that in 2005 we looked at banning.
Right. But they still have the registration process and all that in Middletown.
I would second that, and it's not just, as Ms. Ujifuza says, it's not just the registering. We have 4 good proposed regulations, and I would also suggest that some of these people be on this study group, because they have done the work that our town is not doing. So, they have some great information here.
Ms. Pedro, I'll take offense to the town is not doing.
Well, the town didn't do this.
Do what?
This study of all these different...
Yes, it did.
Oh, they did? Well, I didn't get it.
Mr. Crosby's done it.
I didn't get it in my...
No, you didn't, but it has been done. So let's not pile on staff for accusations that may or may not be true.
All right, well, we're not going to pile on staff. We're going to incorporate some of these people into the study group to help.
I would like to see the rest of the paperwork that generated this memo. I got a piece out of Mr. Crosby, which was presented at the last meeting. I'd like to see the rest of it, because when I look around the data that's in front of me, and again, I have an advantage because I'm on the comp plan, page 7 of the comp plan. In 1990, we had 516 of these vacant seasonal rentals. In 2000, we had 381. In 2010, we had 818. This is page 7 of the comp plan. So I think this, what's being presented tonight, is real. I don't know in those numbers if they violated bedrooms, occupancies, or not. But when I did a Google search, when I asked Mr. Rayner this week for the data, I found 1,128. And Google's not wrong, because none of them were on Prudence.
Well, I also pulled up VRBO, which is the 601, until you drill it down. 601 includes Bristol, Tiverton, North Kingston, Narragansett.
I get it.
It's the general area.
But but again, I asked for Google in Portsmouth. I put 0 miles. And I think the problem that's being presented here tonight is real. I think it's going to need an ordinance, as Kevin stated, that these businesses are going to have to be registered so we understand what it's about. And I support that position. The bad news is we had this meeting in April of last year and didn't want to affect rentals this year, so I support Mrs. Usually Fuscher's position of getting going in a couple weeks. I don't know whether the motion reads 2 weeks or 4 weeks, because I wrote two numbers down from what she said. I have a tendency to wander myself.
She said 2 meetings, which would be 4 weeks.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Right, and I'm not saying that at that point in 4 weeks we'll have everything set, but we should certainly have a fair chunk of the issues that I outlined addressed.
Well, if you want to put together an ordinance that's similar to Middletown's, they've revisited the issue most recently. It's more comparable than Newport.
Well, I don't think we need an ordinance exactly like Newport or Middletown. We're not going to do that. I think the study group is good because they're going to dictate what should be in the ordinance, I think. And we got to mold it to Portsmouth.
Again-
We're not Newport or Middletown.
But we also can't just become jackbooted thugs and start kicking in doors.
That's right.
So
But-
the
but I
ordinance
don't think
needs
you
to
have
be
to do
correct.
that.
The ordinance needs to be correct.
That's right. That's
So-
why we're going to
We
put together the group.
we live under certain laws, and we have to follow them, so let's not...
Sir, can I just add something to that, please?
Yep.
I agree, we live under certain laws, and they all need to be followed, absolutely. And we all listen to the same radio station, WIFM, What's in it for me, and I'm here to tell you guys, what's in it for you. There's plenty of money to be made from these businesses that are not being declared as businesses. One thing that hasn't even come up is parking permits. You're talking about 4 people on a lease. Yeah, leases can be fudged. You can't get a parking permit unless you're on a lease. So now you can't fudge that lease because everybody that lives there is going to want a parking permit because most of our houses in our community don't have driveways. So they're going to need a parking permit. The biggest thing about it, the fire that just happened in Common Fence Point not too long ago, and what one man lost his life, if that happened in our neighborhood, you wouldn't get your fire trucks to the house if it was at the end of our loop.
Correct.
Wouldn't happen. So protect yourself and protect those of us that are staying there, because the people who live out of state who own these houses and are making a ton of money on them, $500 a night is accurate. The house next door to me is $500 a night. They're not going to show up to these meetings and argue with you. We are. We're here to try to fix this problem. We're not telling them to go away. We just want to make sure that we're safe and our community is a place that we can all live and flourish and have a happy life.
And I don't think any of us disagree with you. But we have to do it in a way that's both legal and works for everybody.
I completely agree with that.
and I don't think a parking permit will work in that area for the same reason what you just stated. You couldn't get a big vehicle down there if you had a fire.
Well, they're already on the street, so I don't know.
I know, but when people park there, you can't get one down the street. You'd have more of a casualty than we had 2 weeks ago.
No, I understand, but they're already parking there.
That's why we need an ordinance.
I completely agree.
And I don't think a parking permit works.
Well, it'll limit them from parking 10 cars if they can only get 4, wouldn't it? That's 6 less cars on a very small loop.
I understand.
Well,
Absolutely.
We know people who, I mentioned Sea Pines Plantation, Hilton Head, a very concentrated population. One of their prime ways of regulating the problem they have is that parking is allowed on the land or the forecourt, but the British call it the forecourt of the house, and along their frontage only. End of story. This is for overnight parking. That contrasts with what I observed more than once last summer, certainly July 4th sticks to mind, 28 cars overnight arrayed up and down the street across other neighbors' property than the house in question that can take about, 9 or 10 cars in the forecourt and 4 across its frontage. Parking is a huge issue, and Mr. Crosby made a point. He said, well, we've got a problem with 9 houses, I think it was, in Common Fence Point or Island Park, I don't remember which. But elsewhere in Portsmouth, there's plenty of room, plenty of places to park. It's not a problem. Well, it is a problem if you own a house that you've bought in good faith, that you were living in a single-family residential area, and there are cars all summer long parked across your frontage, on which you pay huge tax. Big problem for me. I'm sure it is for others.
Thank you, sir.
I move the question.
Mr. Rayner, you understand your marching orders, sir?
I do.
Okay. All those in favor?
Wait.
Go ahead. Wait, what?
You're going to include in the motion to incorporate some of these people into that group.
Mr. McCullough,
Is that okay?
Mr. Moore, Ms. Panaggio, and Mr. and...
He's in the back over there.
Yes.
Madam Clerk, did you get those names?
Thank you.
And I'm...
Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up, we have old business. Number 3, requesting an ordinance regarding snow removal and ice mitigation on town sidewalks.
You want to wait for them to turn out? I can start.
No, but if you could
Okay.
do me a huge favor,
Okay.
open the doors and keep them open. Let some air back in here.
Well, thank you for postponing
Ted.
this item until tonight. I was on travel the last meeting.
No worries.
And
Give him one more second, Ted.
okay.
No, he opened the doors and put the latches up. I can already feel the cooler breeze.
Okay, thank you. And like I said, thank you for allowing me to voice my concern. This basically originated from a storm around January 10th. I was just following, shout out to the Portsmouth Times, but they have a Facebook page where people talk about local issues, and people talk about how high school students are trying to walk to school, the sidewalks are not shoveled. We know that we now have a continuous stretch of sidewalk from Founder's Brook all the way almost to Town Hall on Quaker Hill. I drove it twice just to be sure, and that's great news for everybody. We would love to establish a more walkable community. I think that would be a good thing for everybody. It would be a more connected community. It would allow people to go car-free. But what happens once people get into that routine and then snow starts to fall, and it may stick around for a day or it may stick around for 2 weeks. We never know. It's New England, so. And we've been pretty lucky this winter, but maybe we need to plan ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't jinx us.
Okay. Okay. I really apologize. Thanks. So there's a large amount of traffic on a main road. We want to reduce it. So maybe there's several options to provide peace of mind for residents here in Portsmouth, and which include but are not limited to, because I'm all about good ideas. So I'm not going to take it personally if you say my idea is not the best idea. It's individual mandate and ordinance, what I propose in my letter that you see up there. Maybe another idea is to have economy to scale. The next time we do a budget process, allow or direct the DPW to include a line for subcontracting for snow removal on the town sidewalks, regardless of if the state owns the road. Unfortunately, if I go to the Rhode Island Department of Transportation webpage, it says that municipalities are on their own. So it's kind of like, well, what do we do there? So that, I think that might be the holy grail, that maybe just to allow the road to be publicly accessible, ask for the future budgetary requests that we just have a line in there that we subcontract out snow and ice removal for the town. So those are the ideas that I would like to throw out there. Make do with it what you wish.
For your thought process, snow and ice removal on the sidewalks for the town, not the entire town.
Pardon?
You're looking for snow and ice removal just on the sidewalks, not the entire town for snow?
No,
Okay.
Absolutely. I think a sidewalk is pretty clear. I don't know if it's a legal definition for a sidewalk, but I would hope it's commonly understood.
I mean, it's essentially sidewalks around Turnpike, East Main Road to about here, and that's it. And, well, Highland Park, right? Bristol Ferry, Turnpike, East Main, Park Avenue. I mean, that's...
And a little bit of West Main Road on the southern part of town, south of Union Street. There's sidewalks along that stretch.
There is?
Yeah.
So I just want to say that I think what Mr.
Redwood
Peets is raising is an issue of hazard mitigation. And we are, as Mr. Rader pointed out, having a hazard mitigation plan that's going to be started for us to update our old one, and that this piece probably should be part of that conversation. Isn't that right, Mr. Rayner?
I don't think that was the goal of the hazard mitigation plan.
It's only flooding and severe storms.
But not talking about snow removal from sidewalks. So that's way too granular for this type of plan.
Okay, all right. That ain't it. Well, I guess the general feeling is that to do a ordinance change, as you suggested, as Newport has, is too extreme in Portsmouth, but it seems like there has to be something between doing nothing and going to an ordinance change, and I would say maybe we could explore something to address the safety concern. And that's really vague, but...
There's essentially two ways of doing this. Either you put an ordinance together and have the residents who front that piece of sidewalk have to clear it, or we have to task the DPW to clear it.
Right.
Or you can volunteer. I guess there's three ways.
There's three.
I have a four-wheel drive, I'll drive Ted or Mr. Peets to my house to shovel in front of mine, because it's pretty substantial shoveling.
I don't know, Brian, if you want to address that, that's essentially, right, we can install an ordinance, and Newport's not the only one. Providence has a snow removal ordinance. I'm probably pretty sure that Cranston does, but...
Do they do state roads?
Middletown does.
Middletown's doing it from the Christmas tree shop to Wyatt Center, right?
And they're doing West Main Road as well.
Correct.
In front of Kennedy School.
They're doing, there's a huge association with cost for Public Works to do any of this stuff, just like Middletown has a huge cost association. Plus, there's a burden on the police department too, because the police has to have details behind DPW, especially on West Main and East Main Road, because of safety concerns. Then also too, Middletown DPW writes down what location was not shoveled out, because their ordinance is their residents has to shovel out in front of their piece of property. And if it's not shoveled out, then they write down the address and people get ticketed and they go to municipal court. So there's a huge burden on both Public Works and the police department for writing up all these violations. So I don't know how you guys want to stand.
So in front of Christmas tree shop, theoretically, that plaza owner is supposed to clear that sidewalk then?
Correct.
In Middletown's ordinance.
And if it doesn't get cleared, then they'll write it down that they cleared that piece of sidewalk, and they'll write down the address, and the police will send them to municipal court.
The hard part with this is that typically these are the heaviest snows.
Correct.
Because the state road is cleared the whole time, and this is where it piles up the most. This is the widest roads as well.
The widest roads with the sidewalks right on the roads. So we will run into situations where businesses and homeowners will clear the road, and an hour later, the plow's going to put it right back under snow again.
I think Providence ordinance gives them 24 hours, I believe, to clear it, which...
So I think what he's saying is you have to do it multiple times.
We've all been there. We all finish our driveway and the plow comes by.
I mean, it's a state issue in my mind.
The state is not going to do it. We can complain and yell at them as much as we want. They're not going to clear the sidewalks.
No, they're not going to clear the sidewalks.
So,
Brian, you don't even have the equipment. That would be, we'd have to subcontract, right?
No, he's got a price.
Oh, I get a price for a snow thrower for the arm mower. That's not a big deal. It's just, we're short-handed now. We have subcontractors that help us plow our roads. So now, after a snowstorm, you want my guys to work even more overtime to be clearing out sidewalks. It's going to take even more time. And I see you get snow the next day, then it's just it's a huge burden on our department. I mean, if you wanted to do something like that, you want to subcontract it out, I can get prices for that, what it would cost to subcontract it out. I mean, I don't know.
in some of these locations, there's no place to put the snow. The house is right up against it. So that's what most of the homeowners do, is shoot it out into the road and then plows it back.
Right.
Okay, I guess I move to table this issue for now, and so we can move on to the reason that most of these people are still here.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. Ted, we're going to look into it, but it's not an easy question to answer overnight. And I hope you're right and it stays a mild winter and we don't have any more snow. Global warming.
I'm right with Paul.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-1 to table this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we should take it up until we actually have some discussion with Brian, till we understand what the cost is.
Sure.
But that's my position.
Should we ask Brian to look into the cost?
Old business number 4, discussion action, annual audit findings from Haig Shahadi and Company. to guide the town council in consideration of the 2019 budget. Mr. Kessin, you put a memorandum on here, and then we also have the memo.
No,
of
I didn't
what-
put the memorandum on here.
No,
Mr. President, I put the budget consideration PFD, and that was basically to select a date in the future where Mr. Rayner could support going through the MD&A at a further point, or any other questions that council has had. Because we have, in the next item, I think it's the next item behind this, we have the school department requesting money, bringing money forward from a previous year. And currently, I don't understand from the output from the audit how that affects the next budget. So as these considerations and these findings have, like the school department had a $453,000 surplus, I can't tell right now if that $453,000 has a 2%er on it, or in fact they absorbed that cost because the wages are overstated. And again, as we go into this budget cycle, not going in and making decisions and understanding what was in this audit and how it affects the next budget, I think is not the right thing to do. So what I wanted to try to do, and again, I might not have clarified that it was only a date I was looking for to do this. And that's why page 2 of my submittal had Mr. Rayner's schedule. So I don't know whether March 12th is that date or not.
All right, this is where I try and decipher Paul. So you're looking for information that is stated in the audit that may affect our budgeting process for next year, i.e. surpluses that were garnered last year and what surpluses still exist and what they're being used for.
I don't care to know, I guess I don't care to know, but we need to know because you want to help set the budget, right? There were findings in the audit. We had over expenditures in the finance department. I understand it's OPEB costs. I want to make sure that those are covered. We know what those are. We had findings where we had, like I said, a surplus in the school department. And let me think about this. We had a budget of $432,775. We had a budget for materials that was $65,918. We had a budgeted for purchase services of $53,939 for a total balance of $552,632. The only reason I know this is I've created this information for the next school safety capital budget. Those things and other things in the budget, I would like to know prior to starting the budget season and the request for the date on to have that all explained to this council.
As to why they were surplus.
Why they're, whatever the discretion we bring forward if we have an issue. I think we need to understand this audit before we move forward with the next budget. If there's no support for having a date that we discuss that, then I'm fine. I mean, I don't need an auditor to discuss that. It's just us in the town.
Okay, I just need to figure out, I'm still a little confused. If you can put that in a more distinct or more succinct memo than what you put forth for
So my
tonight.
intent is to request a date in the future, March 12th.
That's for tonight. But when you put
I can't do that anymore because Ms. Pedro may have different concerns and so may Mr. Gleason on the end. This is for all of us if we have any, and there may be people that are silent to what concerns them. I only put in the MDA because I think that was a good starting point just as a reference document to why I think we needed a date, sir. Haig Shahidi stated that the 12-13 warrant items would be resolved in this next budget. There was an agreement between them and the town, I think is stated on one of the pages. That $1.169 million or $1.2 million has an effect that we're going to have to find a debt service for that. I don't know where that money's going to, I don't know.
I don't think that's what they...
Well, maybe I can't read then, Mr. President.
Well, no. In the years of the warrants, that warrant, there has been stated in all the different audits that the town had a plan to close this gap. It just hasn't been implemented yet because we haven't, as a council, established said plan.
In January 30th, 2013, this council, not with me on it, made a motion to include $2.4 million, and of the road bond that is still open, $562,000 in the minutes, states and authorized that the then, I think it was Mr. Lathrop, and the council president were authorized to bond that number. In 2013, that memo was sent to me in a discussion, but in my accusing the school department that it was their money because it was a warrant money, and again, I was wrong. It wasn't the school department warrant, it was a town warrant, and we didn't have warrants, we only had bonds. So I've got
warrants and bonds are synonymous.
They are, but typically we only had warrants for schools, and bonding things were for the town.
We've had multiple warrants over the past 10 years that I've been here for the town. It was just the long-term discussion of the $700,000 warrant items for years for the school department. That's where it gets.
Right. So the request is for, and I'll make that motion, if it's okay with Mr. Rayner, that we understand. That's what I want to try to do, is understand where we were when we finished last year before we start this budget cycle. And is March 12th acceptable, looking at your schedule? If we insert one more meeting?
I'm fine with that. I'm not
March 12th is already
totally clear. Are you looking to see what the surplus was?
I don't know what the surplus was. I mean, even after I put in my submittal on page 72, I really want to have page 72 explained to me. And I was going to forward that to you this week.
I think Mr. Kessin just wants a meeting where we can, last time we went through the audit, we went through the technical part of the audit, but there were a lot of unanswered questions that the auditor stood up there and said, well, that's really not a question for me. So I think that there are still some unanswered questions that we need to understand before we start the next budget season. Correct, Mr.?
That was my position as I went through the audit. And I'm asking for a date on March 12th.
So we just want an opportunity to ask some more questions about the audit.
Okay. Do you need the auditor here to do that?
I don't need the auditor, it's only us.
Okay.
And us, and basically maybe just me.
While the auditor has been here this evening and sat through the meeting, would you like to?
Well, I thought it was because
it is.
She gave this second document that
If you need to answer any questions on that.
No, I don't have any questions on that.
On the second document?
I didn't put it in there and didn't see it until the agenda came out. No, I didn't put the second one on, Mr. President. Mine was all one continuous.
It is one continuous, but this discussion could include documentation as promised by the auditors, which shows the difference between the two revisions.
Well, I heard tonight there were two revisions.
That was the last sentence in what you had asked for, so that's why it's there.
That's in your discussion.
I'm satisfied with that.
Okay. That's why it's there. Does anybody have questions? Because Mary has been sitting here all night waiting for this, and she got to listen to Bags and...
Well, I do have a...
So, in order to not make her have to come back again.
All right.
I don't need her here.
Ms. Pedro has a question.
Yeah, I do.
I'm trying to get you to be able to go home.
Thank you, appreciate that. Well, the plastic bag discussion was interesting.
Coming to a town near you soon.
The town, so I'm just reading this document, and I've got highlighted the town issued general obligation debt, of which $600,000 was authorized to pay the remaining portion of the legal settlement. Well, that's a little bit different because this legal settlement was already paid out of the fund balance, correct? So really that $600,000 was to be replenish the fund balance after that settlement was already paid.
Well, theoretically, as I understand your initial vote, and by the way, I don't know what questions you asked that I said we couldn't answer because they weren't questions we would answer. So if you can revisit those questions, I'll be happy to try to re-answer them or answer them for you.
Yeah, I asked about the Wind Enterprise Fund and why we still had the enterprise fund.
Okay, so the...
And you said that's a question for the administration.
So the enterprise fund, right. Funds are established by both the administration and the council at the time a fund is established.
Yeah, I understand that.
And so
but
we would be just reporting on it.
Right, I know that. But that's really not a question for you, so.
Well,
But you just said it was a question she couldn't answer.
Exactly.
No, she just asked me what question did I ask her that she referred to the administration, and I'm telling you that that was the question, and really, the question that I have is about this for you.
So with regard to the debt, you paid in advance, if you will, the $800,000.
Out of the fund balance.
$200,000 of it came from your fund balance.
No. That's incorrect, because...
It's not incorrect.
Yes, it is, because the $200,000 Mr. Lathrop clearly stated to us was already put away, and that's why we only needed to borrow the $600,000.
So the $600,000 came from a debt issue. It did not come from your fund balance.
But when it was paid, it did come from the fund balance.
No, it came from your cash balance. It came from your bank balance when
Okay.
you did pay it. It did not come from your fund balance.
So it replenished the cash balance.
That's correct.
Thank you. And the $200,000 was already...
That came from your fund balance.
That was already... Mr. Lathrop clearly told us that the $200,000 was put away for this particular issue.
So
and maybe
in
that's not a
essence-
question for you. Maybe that is a question for the administration.
So in essence, what it did in the prior year is it was paid out of an appropriation account, a legal appropriation account.
Right.
For which when that account is closed out, it gets closed out to fund balance. So in essence, it came from fund balance. Do you follow me?
It was in the
Yes, I
legal line.
do, but I don't know why it got closed out.
Because at the end of
Because-
every year, revenue and expenditures
It
get
was-
closed out to fund balance. So your
Right.
fund balance increases and decreases based on the excess of revenue over expenditures
I understand
each year.
that. However, that $200,000 was paid, so why would it close out to fund balance if it was gone?
Because the expenditure gets closed out to fund balance, in essence, reducing your fund balance for that $200,000. No other expenses, no other revenue. You've got an expense account of $200,000.
Right.
You have a fund balance at the beginning of the year of $1 million. At the end of the year, that $200,000 gets closed out to fund balance, leaving you with $800,000 in fund
It was
balance.
already budgeted, though.
We're talking apples and oranges again. When you're talking about your fund balance, you're talking about the difference between your actual revenue and your actual expenditures getting close to fund balance on an annual basis. When you're talking about your variance, your plus or minus favorable, unfavorable variances in your budget, that's what you're talking about in terms of your turnbacks. That is not a cash transaction. That is not a fund balance transaction. That transaction is simply to show you from year to year how management did with the budget that you passed. So if you passed a budget and it included $200,000 for legal expense or for the settlement, then that would be a net zero. It's still a reduction of your fund balance. Do you follow?
I do, but I don't agree, because it's just,
That's fine.
But
it's fine. Because it was in the budget. So you don't take budget items and then say they reduced your fund balance.
You do, Counselor, you do. Because basically what you're saying at the end of every year is you take your beginning fund balance, you add all of your revenues, whether they were
Yes,
budgeted or not budgeted, you subtract all your expenditures,
Right.
whether they were budgeted or not budgeted, and you come up with a new fund balance account.
Right.
So whether or not it was budgeted or not has no effect on the reduction of your fund balance for that given year. It doesn't. I
It's-
don't know how to explain it to you any
You
differently.
know what, we've killed this dead horse
I'm
100
done.
times.
I'm
We're
done.
all set. We appreciate it. Thank you for
No
sitting
one-
in.
No one else?
Anybody?
No.
Okay.
Well, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you make a motion to have a discussion on the 12th?
Only if it was acceptable, the date was acceptable to Mr. Rayner.
Well, we're
I
going
don't
to have
know
a discussion
that I
on
got-
the
I never got
old
a
warrant
notice.
item, so we might as well have the discussion the same night. And I don't think there's anything else major on that, the 12th? Just the one public hearing and then... Yeah, so, there's no plastic bag ordinances or anything like that, and it'll stretch us out, so.
So I'll make a motion to add this to the 12th.
And if you could get Mr. Rayner and Mr. Menke a good
I'm going
list
to
of what
try.
you're looking for?
I'm going to try to do that.
I appreciate that.
I gave them what I had, which was the MD&A.
Yep.
And I guess I needed that explained to me if I had a question.
If you could, yeah, well, if you take the
second thing
MD&A,
is-
just
the second-
highlight what you're looking for.
Correct. And the second thing is I now found this page 72 that I don't understand at all.
Yeah, I was looking for that, so that's new, so that's not on your list.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I'm,
Is there a second for that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
I think I'm on to new business number 2, because we already did number 1, correct? So we have an application for approval, request of a special events fields application from Wendy for a couple of items here. I need my eyeballs.
Mr. President, I move to approve both items, A and B.
For the event fields?
So one is an ML8 Events, Jessica Presidio. Wow. 13,310 Southwest 14th Place, Davie, Florida, for Future Phenoms College Combine Lacrosse Training Event, July 25th through the 26th, 2018. And then the John Thompson LLC, John Thompson 1114 Middle Road, Portsmouth Soccer Camps, April 16th through the 19th, July 9th through the 12th, and August 13th through the 16th, all 2018. So those are the items. The second, any discussion? Ms. Pedro?
I know I asked this before, but what happens to the recycling? Do we provide recycle containers, or are they supposed to do it?
They have to do it.
They have to do it.
It's part of the plan.
Right. So, like, when we have these application forms, and it says, will you sell food? You will need a peddler's license. I think that we need to add, well, maybe this is a different agenda item, but we need to add, you will need recycle containst
Is that part of the application?
She says they're going to comply
If
with...
if you look at the first item has all that.
Oh, it does?
I didn't see it in the
It
second.
has a standard operating procedures that talks about
Second might be
open
too small.
fires and recycling, et cetera.
Okay.
Dirt bikes.
Oh, I see it, yep. Provide the collection of removal.
It's
Okay,
also based on
thank
the
you.
size of the
All right.
thing, so. All right. Any other further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0 on both items. Let's skip over on the new business 3. I'm just kidding. You didn't even realize that was you, did you? New business 3, discussion and action, request town council expedite the distribution of funds to the safety capital budget plan for this year. Superintendent Riley, how are you?
I'm still awake, so.
Still awake.
Uh,
Good news, you get to do this again tomorrow night.
That's true. So-
You won't talk about plastic bags, though, will you?
On February 13th, in a discussion at our school committee meeting, we did review and propose to the school committee that we move forward during the budget process to accelerate years 2 and 3 of our safety capital plan. We did this in response to a lot of parent outreach and community conversations with PTOs at all of our schools around how to improve safety as quickly as possible. As you know, year one was funded, and we had already moved to install some of those safety pieces of equipment, and I think that was a really positive sign for parents to see that work was in the midst of happening. At our meeting on February 13th, there was a motion, a second, and an approval by the school committee to bring forward to the town council a request that years 2 and 3 be funded immediately. We currently have a company doing all of our card access for both Hathaway and Melville, which was in year 1 of the safety plan. We would like to be able to have the vendor just continue the work and move on to the middle and high school and just keep rolling with all of the work that's happening at the schools instead of waiting until the new fiscal year.
And the request is for $225,000?
For $225,000.
And are you looking for that tomorrow, or are you looking for this into July 1st?
No, we're looking for that tomorrow.
Okay. So in order to give this to you tomorrow, we have to change our budget for the year.
Correct, or you did fund I'm not telling you how to fund it, I'm just saying last year's safety plan was funded out of impact fees.
But we still have to change the bottom line budget of both the town and the school, which changes the fund, the balance ordinance and all that fun stuff. We have a really long ordinance.
I remember it well, I was here
before. She loves that.
Why can't you take it out of your own capital
We didn't already spend the
improvement?
contingency.
Why can't you take it out of your own capital improvement?
I come to you with a request of the school committee.
Okay.
We do have a plan, so you will hear in our budget request, we did have a surplus last year, which we would propose to use to fund year 5 of our capital plan. It would cover one of the roofs that's planned for year 5, of which, similar to the previous projects that we did on the boilers, the town receives the full 35% reimbursement, even though the school department would pay for that year 5.
I want to get the 225 back, or whatever the 30-40% from the state is, because these are safety upgrades, and there is a bill that has been put forth that everybody's ignoring under the state and going after guns instead, but that's okay. I won't go down that political route right now. We have to figure out, Mr. Rayner and Mr. Menke and Mr. Gavin, we have to figure out how to legally do this underneath the budget if we want to go ahead, and I don't think there's anybody up here who wants to say no to making our schools safer.
Right.
But we
We're not
have to
gonna
figure out a way to do
say no to making our schools safer, but you have the money in your own.
If they go to spend that, we have to change their budget as well. It doesn't matter which way we go about this. Money is money, and if they're going to spend more than we've allotted for them, we have to change their budget, period. So,
Mr. President, I make a motion that we accept the school department's recommendation that they combine years 2 and 3 to get the capital improvement safety work done sooner, 2 and 3, and that that it be funded through impact fees, as were the 2017 safety capital plan.
is there a second for discussion?
Second for discussion.
Mr. Rayner and Mr. Menke, you have to come back with us with an amended budget that would show this. So you may not get this tomorrow, because we still have to see the amended budget.
So what happens is, I guess my question is, what happens if the impact fees aren't there? Are we going to raise the tax rate? Is that not a-
They are there. We have $460,000.
There's 2 issues with the impact fees. A, if anybody, you can get caught in 2 legal loopholes. One could read that the impact fees are used if the growth in town has had an effect on the size and the resources you have at your school. There is one word that says safety in there, in the ordinance, not in the ordinance. I really don't care about the ordinance. I'm looking at state law. So there is one word in there that says safety. So if one were to make the argument that because we have more people in town, even though there's less students, therefore there's a greater chance that safety at the school is compromised, therefore we can use the impact fees. I guess that's the only route you guys could take.
And we clearly have evidence that that is a fact that we've had to contend with.
But do we have a written legal opinion from your
We do.
solicitor?
Last year, she submitted for the same for this.
So why wasn't...
And that's her opinion And have we gotten an opinion back from anybody at the state that says it's okay? Here's my concern. 4 years from now, or 3 years from now, said developer comes back and says, your schools didn't need to get bigger, I want my money back. Then we have to go find that $225,000. So I would just want everybody to be wary of that.
Mr. President, I'm not aware of any legal decisions that have been made that would cause you to have that worry.
Anybody else have questions for Superintendent Riley or Chairperson Portervin?
I support the safety, I just don't want to have to take it on the chin.
It's in a fund that specifically is designed by our ordinance and by state law to go to schools for improvements.
So is the agreement that the school would come back with this money if somebody did come get it?
And then we come back to you,
Yeah.
The money's available. We have $460,000 in impact fees. It's was used last year, Mr. President, and
Fine, I understand that. I heard your argument. Secondly, we have to have an opinion as to how this affects maintenance of effort.
Capital doesn't affect the maintenance of effort.
Okay, just,
We're not asking you to increase our
Operating budget, right. Capital does not have an impact on our maintenance of effort.
so if you can talk to the state and see how we have to go about to change our ordinance, our budget ordinance that we passed on June 26th, somewhere in that ballpark, and how we transfer the money. I will support this, but you may not get the money till March 13th.
We're still working at Hathaway and Melville, so.
And I want a real man trap. One person in, one person out.
I was going to say, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but
the comma
I
makes
haven't
all
seen your
the
man
difference.
trap yet, but
The
this
com-
is,
The comma makes all the
this is
difference.
very, very tight. One person in, one person out.
our safety officer can demonstrate it for you, but it's really probably one of the, if we're not the only school district that has this type of man trap, I'd be surprised. It's ballistic film on all the glass, and it can trap the intruder between the doors.
The man traps I have been in going into different pharmaceutical companies and large companies is, if he's holding a gun to my back, he can't get in with me. And then I'm trapped in there, or he's trapped in there. It's one person in, one person out. The door swivels.
Gotcha.
You go in, it swivels, it closes, they
We do
check
not
you
have a
out,
door
and it
swivel.
swivels and goes back out. That's what I envisioned as you guys getting a man trap, but,
But only one door opens.
Right.
The door doesn't open until the other door.
but you could follow Anna in if you wanted to.
I'm going to tell you this, if you tried to do that at one of our schools right now, I don't think there's another person who would let you follow them.
Understood. But we also all know that we all have not very good long-term memories, and the next thing you know...
Yes,
sometime-
unfortunately, that's
sometime
very
next
true.
December, somebody's
You're
going to leave
right.
a door open.
You're right.
Unfortunately. But that's another discussion.
It is.
Motion is to take $225,000 out of the impact fees and give them to the school department for security upgrades once we have a path forward with our budget and to change the ordinance, which would be sometime on the 12th. We'd have to just, I don't even know if there's a vote then, it's just, I guess, a final release at that point in time. I just want to make sure we do that side legally.
So are you asking Linda to amend her motion?
Please.
To include?
To include the change to the budget ordinance.
Change to the budget?
As needed.
And a legal opinion?
In terms of?
I don't know. You said you were looking one from the state.
We have one.
Okay.
It's right there.
Yeah, and what about your concerns?
So amended.
I still have my concerns.
Well,
But
I think we need to
her-
answer those concerns first before we vote on this.
she has handed out a legal opinion that those concerns theoretically have been answered. I won't know if our concerns are her legal opinion may be different. The beauty of America, anybody can sue anybody for just about anything. So if there's a developer who says, I want my stuff back, and he's got a good enough lawyer and deep enough pockets, he can come back and
Right,
get his
and you can
impact
get
fees.
5 different lawyers in a room, and they could all disagree.
Exactly. So,
We did this last year, and these,
Agreed.
I don't see that things are different this year.
they may not be. And they may come back next year and, from last year and ask for that money back too.
We have an 8-year period in which to spend these impact fees, after which they have to be returned. And I think that's the problem that Middletown ran into. They were holding on to their funds for too long. It really makes sense for us to spend these funds because this is obviously an important need, and it's, that's what the funds were meant to do. And we have a legal opinion saying so.
So will you amend your motion?
Yes.
And who seconded it? I'm sorry.
I will.
Okay. So the motion's been amended to include just the paperwork that needs to be done to get the money. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
folks. New business number 4, request support of a resolution in the opposition to the proposed inclusion of the North Atlantic region of in the 2019 to 2024 Northern Atlantic. All right. We don't want to. The governor wants a nice piece of paper from us saying we support her in banning oil drilling. That's never going to happen.
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Request support of a resolution to support the removal of the sunset provision regarding the Residential Mortgage Foreclosure Mediation Act. This doesn't have a huge impact on us, but we might also do it in case there is that one resident that needs it.
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Future meetings. We have a meeting on March 12th, the 26th, and the 9th. Aren't there a couple more stuck in there with the budget?
There will be one on the 31st, which is going to be executive session, which is your...
Correct. That's a Saturday.
March 31st?
Yes, that is the Saturday for mediation with the Pittsburgh. Okay.
March 31st?
March 31st is Saturday. We haven't set a time yet, but we said 9 or 10 o'clock. I think 10 o'clock for, yes, for our resident bassist, or guitar. Bass or guitar?
I've got 10 o'clock on my book.
Okay. Any other meetings needed? So we'll be able to do what Paul is looking for on the 12th, because it doesn't look like a very full agenda.
Yeah, and I think we ought to take
That's
this...
the 26th, I think.
We ought to take this and make this part of the document that Jen's going to receive and send to us. This is the backup.
Yeah, if you can somehow scan that in, a couple pages perhaps. All right. That being said, we have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.